Chapter 443. Mr. Chen was the exclusive lawyer of the Li Group. He never thought that one day he would receive such a request from his employer. "GM Li, are you serious?" "Of course." Li Qianxue looked determined. If it wasn't because she had already gone through a night's buffer, she wouldn't have been able to remain so calm. Su Qinghui had been married to her for so many years, and he had a lot of property under his name. Those were his property to begin with, so Li Qianxue wouldn't care about them. As for the share that originally belonged to the Li Group, she could also give it to Su Qinghui, depending on the situation. Su Qinghui had 10% of the company's shares, which had originally belonged to him. Although Li Qianxue was angry, she did not intend to take back the shares. But there was one thing: Su Qinghui has no right to sell or transfer the shares of the Li Group. If you want to transfer or sell it, you can only sell it to Li Qianxue or the Su siblings. Li Qianxue didn't want Su Qinghui to give so many shares to Su Peixian in the future. She had raised Su Peixian for more than 20 years. In the future, she would give her the treatment she deserved. However, Su Peixian could forget about Li Group's shares. It had never belonged to her in the first place, and it would never be hers in the future. The rest was just a small problem. Li Qianxue was very detailed. Su Qingsang listened on the side and felt that although Su Qinghui had divorced Li Qianxue, as long as he didn't make too much trouble in the future, he wouldn't have a bad life. She looked up at Li Qianxue, even though Su Qinghui had done so many outrageous things. He was afraid that Li Qianxue still had feelings for him. Li Qianxue didn't care about her daughter's emotions. After saying all that she could give to Su Qinghui, Li Qianxue added, "I'll send it to him today. When the Civil Affairs Bureau starts working tomorrow, I'll go and settle the paperwork." She couldn't wait any longer. "All right." Lawyer Chen was in a difficult position, but he still stood up and put away his notebook. "Where is General Manager Su now?" "Just call him." Li Qianxue didn't care about Su Qinghui anymore. For her, Su Qinghui had become a person who had nothing to do with her. Whether he lived or died had nothing to do with her. When Lawyer Chen walked out, Hua Jinyao happened to come over. "Hua Jinyao, why are you here?" Su Qingsang stood up and walked to his side. She thought he had returned to Rong City today. "Our flight is in the afternoon," Hua Jinyao said, glancing at Su Qingsang with a meaningful look. "Afternoon? What time is it?" "Around 3:00. Hua Jinyao thought of the lie he told Xiang Kaiping yesterday. Xiang Kaiping didn't suspect anything yesterday, but she was a little worried when she didn't see Su Qingsang this morning. She kept asking Hua Jinyao why Su Qingsang wasn't back yet. "I don't think you can hide it anymore." Hua Jinyao's voice was very soft. "I'll try to get her on the plane this afternoon. But I can't guarantee that I'll be able to fool her." After all, Xiang Kaiping had been working hard in the outside world for so many years. She had good judgment. "Unless you follow me back to Rong City, I'm afraid you won't be able to hide it." Su Qingsang looked a little conflicted. She turned around and saw that Li Qianxue and Su Yusin were standing behind them, obviously listening to her plan. You go back first." Su Qingsang thought about it for a long time and gave such an answer. "Send her back to my apartment first, then let Xiao Yu and Xiao Ning stay to take care of her. Then I'll go over and explain to her tonight." "Are you sure?" "Yes." Su Qingsang thought about it. No matter how good she was, she couldn't hide it forever. Li Qianxue was always careful when facing her, which made her feel bad. After thinking about it, she could only make it clear to Xiang Kaiping. Since she was destined to let one side down, she had to make a choice. Hua Jinyao clearly saw that Li Qianxue and Su Yusin were behind Su Qingsang. They were relieved because of her words. "Do you need me to go with you?" Hua Jinyao was still a little worried. No need. Su Qingsang shook her head. You've wasted enough time because of me. Go back to Rong City in the afternoon. Say hello to Grandpa for me. And say sorry to him that I can't go to celebrate the festival with him. Don't worry. I said it. Grandpa won't blame you. Hua Jinyao rubbed the top of her head affectionately. Su Qingsang wasn't sure if old Master Hua really wouldn't blame her. But at the moment, she really wanted to deal with these things in Lin City before she could go to Rong City. Hua Jinyao didn't leave until after lunch at the Su family. Before he left, he called Yang Wenchang and asked him to make arrangements for Xiang Kaiping. He went directly to the airport. Su Qingsang said she would drive him, but he refused. Hua Jinyao asked her to tell Xiang Kaiping that she and Su Peixian had been switched. Watching Hua Jinyao leave, Su Qingsang suddenly felt more like a student. How could it be so easy to tell Xiang Kaiping that she and Su Peixian had been switched? If Xiang Kaiping found out, she was afraid that she would go crazy. At a time like this, Su Qinghui should be the one to talk. However, Su Qinghui probably wasn't in the mood to face Xiang Kaiping now. Su Qinghui sat in the office for the whole night. He didn't sleep, nor did he rest. After leaving the Su family yesterday, Su Qinghui suddenly found that he had nowhere to go. Of course, he had more than one house in Lin City. But those houses were cold and lifeless. He stayed there for the whole night, sitting in a daze. He didn't know where he could go. He didn't know who he could ask for help. There were so many names in his phone's contact list, but at this time, no one could help him. Because none of them could solve his problem. His phone rang. Su Qinghui suddenly seemed to come back to his senses and picked it up. He thought it would be Li Qianxue or anyone else in the Su family. But on the other end of the phone, it was Lawyer Qin. Lawyer Qin asked him where he was. After learning that he was in the company, he asked him to wait for a few minutes and said that he would be there soon. Su Qinghui hung up the phone, looking a little confused. He didn't know why the lawyer was here. A possibility flashed through his mind. However, Su Qinghui refused to think about that possibility, refused to face it. But no matter how much he refused, what would come would still come. Lawyer Chen entered the door, sat down opposite him, and took out a divorce agreement from his bag. General Manager Su, I'm sorry. I was wronged by Mr. Li. I came to give you the divorce agreement. Do you want to take a look? Divorce agreement. Su Qinghui felt as if his heart had been punched so hard that he couldn't straighten his back. Chapter 444. Su Qinghui stared blankly at the divorce agreement. He didn't even look at its contents. He raised his head slightly and looked at Lawyer Chen. She asked you to send it over. Mr. Chen was the lawyer of the Li Group. He had a good relationship with Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui. Meeting Su Qinghui's eyes, he felt very uncomfortable. Yes. Just send this over. Su Qinghui didn't even look at the agreement. He stared at Lawyer Chen and insisted on an answer. President Li said that if it's possible, General Manager Su, please sign it as soon as possible. Because she wants to get the paperwork done quickly. Her words undoubtedly stabbed Su Qinghui in the heart again. He closed his eyes, unwilling to face this fact, even if he already knew it. I won't sign it. President Su, I won't sign it. If you want me to sign, let her talk to me herself. Lawyer Chen looked troubled. Mr. Su, please don't make things difficult for me. I'm not trying to make things difficult for you. I'm just telling you. If she wants me to sign, I won't sign it unless she comes herself. Su Qinghui didn't know what he was obsessed with, but he knew very well that he didn't want to let it go like this. He couldn't just let it go like this. Lawyer Chen looked at Su Chenghui. He had no idea how things had turned out this way. In fact, as a lawyer of the Li Group, he knew more than the average person. Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue were not as harmonious as they appeared on the surface. But no matter how bad their relationship was, the two of them had been together for more than 20 years. Speaking of which, the two of them were both good to the outside world and the inside world. Their teamwork was pretty good. How many rich couples had deep feelings for each other? But he didn't expect that after a year. He didn't know how it ended up like this. Sighing, Lawyer Chen also knew that there was no room for negotiation. After all, Li Qianxue's attitude yesterday was so firm. President Su, I'll leave the document here. I think you should take a look at it first before deciding whether to sign it or not. Su Chenghui didn't say anything. Lawyer Chen left the documents behind and left. Su Chenghui was the only one left in the office. He sat there for a long time without moving. When Su Qingsang parked the car in front of her apartment, she looked a little hesitant. Before she went out, Li Qianxue looked reluctant. He even wanted to follow her. But she rejected him. If Li Qianxue was here, things would get even more complicated. Li Qianxue finally let her go after she repeatedly promised that she would go home after she made it clear to Xiang Kaiping. Sitting in the car, Su Qingsang suddenly didn't dare to face Xiang Kaiping. She had known about it for a long time, but she had never told Xiang Kaiping. I wonder if she will blame me. Su Qingsang didn't know. After sitting in the car in a daze for a few minutes, she finally opened the door. When she got out of the car, there was a car parked right behind her. She stared blankly at the familiar license plate. When Su Chenghui got out of the car, Su Qingsang's eyes widened. Dad? Why is he here? She was so surprised that she even forgot to close the car door. She stared blankly as Su Chenghui walked toward her step by step. When she got closer, she found that Su Chenghui looked very haggard. His chin was full of scum, and his eyes were bloodshot. Dad! Su Chenghui stood there and looked at Su Qingsang. This was his daughter. He closed his eyes, and his voice was a little weak. Why are you here? Su Qingsang thought for a moment and decided to tell the truth. I came to explain to Auntie about my identity. Hearing that, Su Chenghui couldn't help but look at her again. You're going to explain? Su Qingsang thought to herself. If she didn't explain, should she let Su Chenghui explain? Dad, why are you here? I'll explain to her. Su Chenghui's voice sounded a little tired. He sat in his office for a long time. He found that he had done many things wrong. In the past, he could still find excuses and reasons for himself. But now, he couldn't even find an excuse for himself. He thought that what was wrong was wrong. Since it was already wrong, he would find a way to make up for it. The first thing was to get everything back on track. Su Qingsang widened her eyes and looked at Su Chenghui in disbelief. Was he serious? Go back. I'll go upstairs and talk to her. Su Qingsang stood there and thought for a moment. She shook her head and said, No need. I'll go with you. After all, she had been with Xiang Kaiping for a few months. If Xiang Kaiping was really annoyed or angry later, she might be able to talk to her. Xiang Kaiping didn't expect to see Su Qingsang and Su Chenghui at the same time. In fact, when Su Qingsang didn't come back yesterday and Hu Jinyao sent her back to her apartment this morning, she had a vague feeling that something was wrong. She thought about calling Su Qingsang. However, Hu Jinyao said that she had something to do, so she wanted to wait for her. However, she didn't expect to see Su Qingsang and Su Chenghui at the same time. That surprised her a little. She wanted to drive Su Qinghui out, but she gave up when she saw Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang saw Xiang Kaiping with mixed feelings and called her mother softly. Qingsang, you're back. Has the matter at the hospital been resolved? Ah. Yes. Su Qingsang nodded, looked at Xiao Yu and Xiao Ning, and said, Are the dishes ready for dinner? Xiao Yu and Xiao Ning. Why don't you go buy some vegetables? Xiao Yu and Xiao Ning looked at each other and stood up at the same time. Okay, let's go now. The two of them left. The living room suddenly became quiet. Su Qinghui, who had been standing at the door, took a step inside. Qingsang, didn't you say that you were going to Rome City for the festival? You're back so late today. Are you still going to Rome City? I'm not in a hurry. But I'm afraid that Hu Jinyao's family will have a problem with you. I have something to do at the moment, so I can't go. When Su Qingsang saw the concern in Xiang Caiping's eyes, she couldn't say a word. Let me say it. Su Qinghui walked to Xiang Kaiping in 2 steps. When he saw the disgust in her eyes, his heart didn't fluctuate at all. What do you want to say? Xiang Kaiping stared at Su Qinghui warily. Make it short. She was annoyed and didn't want to see Su Qinghui, which made Su Qingsang a little uncomfortable. She glanced at Su Qinghui and said, Dad, sit down and talk. I'll go to the kitchen and get you some water. She turned into the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of water. When she came out, Su Qinghui had already sat down on the sofa opposite Xiang Kaiping. Kaiping. What I'm going to say next might make you angry, or you might hate me. But I want you to calm down and listen to me. Since you know that I'll be angry after hearing it. Then don't say it. Xiang Kaiping said coldly, her face full of mockery. Su Qinghui didn't care. Seeing Su Qingsang walk to him, he took the glass from her hand. The warm water calmed him down. He stared at the glass in his hand, not looking at Xiang Kaiping. 25 years ago, you gave birth to our child in the hospital. At that time, you were still angry with me. So you threw the child to me and asked me to take care of it. Su Qinghui's voice was calm, as if he was talking about someone else's business. Xiang Kaiping instinctively felt that something bad was going to happen. She gripped the armrest of the wheelchair tightly and stared at Su Qinghui warily. What are you trying to say? Su Qingsang closed her eyes, as if she had gone back to more than 20 years ago, back to the days when she was obsessed with him. In order to take revenge on Li Qianxue, I took her child, and our child. Later, I couldn't bear it, so I took the child back. But... Xiang Kaiping widened her eyes and looked at Su Qinghui in disbelief. He kept his head down and stared at the glass of water in front of him. That's what happened. I took your and Li Qianxue's child. Su Qingsang is Li Qianxue's daughter. Su Peixian is our child. Su Qingsang already knew that, but hearing Su Qinghui say it out loud, she still felt quite complicated. She looked at Xiang Kaiping with a worried face, worried that she couldn't take it. Xiang Kaiping sat there in a daze. She didn't speak, nor did she move. If she made a fuss, Su Qingsang could still think of a way to comfort her. But Xiang Kaiping was like this, and she didn't even know how to comfort her. The word mother went through her heart, but she didn't say it out loud. She handed the glass of water to Xiang Kaiping, trying to comfort her in this way. Xiang Kaiping looked at the glass of water, then looked at Su Qingsang's face. You already knew, didn't you? Su Qingsang met Xiang Caiping's eyes and didn't know what to say. Xiang Kaiping suddenly grabbed her wrist. Su Qingsang was caught off guard, and some water spilled out of her hand. No one had time to care about that. Xiang Kaiping stared at her face and said word by word, you already knew, didn't you? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. I knew before the Lunar New Year. You knew before the Lunar New Year. Xiang Kaiping tightened her grip and looked at Su Qingsang. Her tone was colder than before. You knew before the Lunar New Year. Su Qingsang couldn't bear to see her agitated face, but she had to say what she wanted to say. That time, you were injured and hospitalized. I knew. You were type O, but I was type AB. She didn't say the rest, but Xiang Kaiping understood what she meant. At that time, Su Qingsang knew that Xiang Kaiping wasn't her daughter. You didn't tell me. Why didn't you tell me? Xiang Caiping's voice was several degrees higher than before. She stared at Su Qingsang, unable to believe that she wasn't her daughter. How could this be? How could this be? Su Qingsang couldn't say it out loud. I'm sorry. At that time, I only knew that I wasn't your child. But I didn't know whose child I was. I used to think that I was born from my father and a woman outside. Chapter 445. There was still some time before Su Qingsang found out that she was not Xiang Caiping's daughter. How could Xiang Kaiping accept this news so easily? She looked at Su Qingsang and felt that she had been betrayed by the whole world. Su Qinghui had betrayed her, and now Su Qingsang had betrayed her as well. Xiang Kaiping couldn't accept it. She stared at Su Qingsang's hand and insisted on an answer. Why didn't you tell me? Tell me. Tell me. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Caiping's hand. Her voice was very soft. I'm sorry. I actually wanted to tell you. But you were injured at that time, and you couldn't take the stimulation. Another reason was that I didn't know whose daughter I was. I don't know where your daughter is. I asked my dad, but he wouldn't tell me. I kept guessing, but I couldn't figure it out. Later on, I felt that it didn't matter whose daughter I was. Why don't I recognize you? It's good that we can depend on each other like this from now on. During that time, Su Qingsang really regarded Xiang Kaiping as her mother. She really wanted to spend the rest of her life with Xiang Kaiping. Mom. In fact, it was obviously not appropriate to call her mom at this time, but Su Qingsang couldn't change the way she addressed her. She squatted down in front of Xiang Kaiping to look her in the eye. I'm sorry. I really didn't know before. I'm really grateful to you from the bottom of my heart, and I really see you as my mother. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang. There was a ball of fire in her heart. That ball of fire kept burning in her heart, giving her the urge to burn everything down. Then how do you know now? Didn't you say he wouldn't tell you? As she spoke, she glared at Su Qinghui. That gaze seemed to be able to pierce through him. Su Qingsang suddenly fell silent. She didn't know what to say. In fact, Hu Jinyao guessed it, so she went to do a paternity test. Now that things had come to this, it was meaningless to talk about how they discovered it. The damage was done. I told her. Su Qinghui's voice sounded a little abrupt. He looked at Xiang Kaiping, not avoiding her gaze. Kaiping. I said it. These things were also done by me. Don't look at Qingsang. In fact, she never wanted to hurt you. You can see it from her decision to go to Rome City with you. She has really decided to live with you. Kaiping. I know this may be hard for you. But that was the truth. Qingsang is not your daughter. Peijian is. Sorry. Xiang Kaiping finally let go of Su Qingsang's hand and turned to face Su Qinghui. His sharp gaze was filled with monstrous hatred. After I come back, you'll know that I've acknowledged Qingsang. Right? Xiang Caiping's voice was sharp, and her tone was rather blunt. You came to me again and again just to tell me this. Yes. Su Chenghui nodded and faced Saiping's anger. You had many opportunities to tell me, but you didn't tell me even once. Right? Yes. Su Chenghui didn't deny it. At that time, I couldn't open my mouth at first, but later, it became more and more difficult for me to say it. For revenge, you gave my daughter to the woman I hate the most to raise. Right? Su Chenghui closed his eyes. He couldn't argue. He had nothing to say. Xiang Kaiping suddenly reached out, snatched the cup from Su Qingsang's hand, and threw it in Su Chenghui's direction. Su Chenghui didn't dodge. The cup hit his chest heavily, then fell to the ground and shattered. Su Qingsang wanted to stop him, but it was too late. Seeing Su Chenghui hit the cup, the water inside spilled out, soaking most of his clothes. For some reason, she couldn't bear it. Her lips moved, wanting to say something, but she couldn't say a word. Su Chenghui, why don't you go to hell? Xiang Kaiping was really angry. Her chest rose and fell violently, and the expression on her face was no longer as calm as before. It was ferocious and angry. Why did you give my child to someone else to raise? Why did you change my child's life? What did you tell me when you took my daughter away? You said that you would take good care of your daughter, and you said that you would give her the best. So this is what you meant by the best of everything. Su Chenghui couldn't refute that. Under those circumstances, he had indeed decided to give the Li group to Su Peixian. That was the best he could give her. Su Chenghui, what right do you have to make decisions for my daughter? Xiang Kaiping was really angry. She was angry, hurt, and regretful. This feeling was even more regretful than when she found out that Su Chenghui ignored Su Qingsang and didn't take good care of her daughter. Do you think that I will thank you for turning my daughter into the Su family's young miss? Do you think I will forgive you because you made my daughter the granddaughter of the Li family? In your dreams. Let me tell you, I won't. I won't forgive you. You made my daughter recognize the woman I hate the most as her mother. Do you think you are doing this for her good? Do you think you are doing this for her good by giving her property and money? Su Chenghui, you don't understand love at all. You don't understand anything at all. Let me tell you, don't think I will forgive you. Impossible. Xiang Kaiping pointed at Su Chenghui. She was so angry that she couldn't face him calmly. I won't. Su Chenghui. I won't be grateful to you. I won't forgive you. I will only hate you. Su Chenghui's face was pale. He looked even more haggard than before. Kaiping. Kaiping, I really did it on impulse. I already regret it. I also know that you will blame me and hate me. But I really did it for the sake of our daughter. For the sake of our daughter. Why don't you say that you did it for yourself? Xiang Kaiping unceremoniously exposed his lie. You just wanted to take revenge on Li Qinxue. But you couldn't find a way. You couldn't deal with her, so you came up with such a vicious idea. You didn't do it to give your daughter everything you think is best, as you said. You just wanted to satisfy your own ridiculous desire for revenge. Xiang Kaiping said all this in one breath. In the end, she felt as if all the energy in her body had been sucked out. She lowered her head and glanced at the broken pieces on the floor. There were many voices in her heart, many words. In the end, they all turned into one sentence. Su Chenghui, I am really disappointed in you. She still remembered the young man from before. He was high-spirited and full of ambition. He said that he wanted to make a lot of money and give her a good life. At that time, she was innocent and naive, and she believed his words. Where did it go wrong? That young man grew up and became a successful businessman. After her outburst, Xiang Kaiping was left with only a blank look. She hated not only Su Qinghui but also herself at this time. She shouldn't have come back, and she shouldn't have appeared. She shouldn't have come to claim her daughter. That way, she wouldn't have known that Su Qinghui had swapped her daughter. She wouldn't have known that Su Qinghui had become such a person. That way, she would still be able to keep a beautiful image in her heart, imagining that her daughter was living a happy life, not like this. Yes. Even if Su Peixian became the eldest daughter of the Su family, Xiang Kaiping wouldn't be happy. Su Qinghui had been criticized by Xiang Kaiping so many times. But it didn't hurt as much as this sentence. Xiang Kaiping was disappointed in him. He knew that what he had done was indeed very disappointing. But now, the person who was disappointed was Xiang Kaiping. Ever since he was young, he had treated her like his own sister. She was like a close relative to him. Now she said that she was disappointed in him. Su Qinghui didn't know what else he could say. He just sat there in a daze and didn't move. Go. Xiang Kaiping closed her eyes and didn't look at Su Qinghui. She turned her face away, not wanting to look at Su Qinghui anymore. Su Qinghui sat there motionlessly, looking at Xiang Kaiping with a complicated look in his eyes. Get out. Xiang Kaiping pointed in the direction of the door. Get out of here. I don't want to see you. Seeing that Su Qinghui was still standing there, she suddenly got angry. She couldn't care less about her waist that had just recovered. She stood up and quickly rushed to Su Qinghui to pull his arm. Get out. Get out of here. If you don't leave, I won't be polite. I won't be polite to you. Su Qinghui was pulled to his feet by her. Looking at Xiang Kaiping, who was full of anger and had completely lost her cool, he stood up. Kaiping. I'm sorry. Get out. Xiang Kaiping pulled his arm and pushed him out of the door. Kaiping. Get out. Xiang Kaiping became agitated again because of his presence. Seeing this, Su Qingsang took 2 steps forward. Dad, you should leave first. Xiang Kaiping was so agitated at this moment. It was obviously not a good time to talk. Su Qinghui looked at Su Qingsang. He didn't just feel sorry for Li Qianxue, Xiang Kaiping, and Su Qingsang. Qingsang. You should leave. Su Qingsang gave him a look. Hurry up. His presence here would only make things worse. Su Qinghui actually knew this. He took a step back, looked at Xiang Kaiping, and then looked at Su Qingsang. Qingsang. I'm sorry. This was what he owed Su Qingsang. He wouldn't run away because of this. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. She was very surprised to hear this word from her father's mouth. Xiang Kaiping glanced at Su Qingsang and wanted to tell her to leave too. But at this moment, she suddenly remembered that this was Su Qingsang's home. This realization made her angry. She snorted and pushed Su Qinghui away. At the same time, she didn't forget to close the door. Turning around, she saw Su Qingsang standing there. She was looking at Su Qingsang, and Su Qingsang was also looking at her. Their eyes met. The mother and daughter, who used to be intimate, didn't say a word at this moment. Su Qingsang really didn't know what else she could say. She felt that whatever she said would be wrong, and the more she said, the more wrong it would be. Xiang Kaiping stared at her face. After spending a few months with Su Qingsang, she had a certain understanding of her. Chapter 446. You've already acknowledged her. Am I right? Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang, stubbornly demanding an answer. Su Qingsang couldn't argue back, so she chose to remain silent. Right now, he was in a dilemma. He could neither advance nor retreat. You said you were going to the hospital yesterday, but you were actually going to see Li Qinxue, right? The anger on Xiang Caiping's face became more and more obvious. Rationally, he knew that it was normal for Su Qingsang to recognize Li Qinxue. However, he found it hard to accept. She couldn't accept Su Peixian as her daughter. She almost got herself killed. She couldn't accept that Su Qingsang was Li Qinxue's daughter. Su Qingsang was obviously much better than Su Peixian. That was right. That was why she hated Su Qinghui the most. If he hadn't swapped the two children, Su Peixian would have been an illegitimate daughter. Then, Su Peixian would be like Su Qingsang, sensible, obedient, and completely in line with the daughter in her heart. Not an arrogant, willful, selfish, and mean personality. That was not how she wanted to see her daughter. Su Qinghui had ruined all of that. Destroyed. Su Qingsang looked into Xiang Caiping's eyes and couldn't say no. Her silence was the best proof. Xiang Caiping looked at her and nodded repeatedly. All right. That's nice. That was great. Since you've already acknowledged her, why are you still calling me mother? Ha! Why are you still calling me mom? Xiang Caiping was very emotional. She couldn't control the anger in her heart at all, and she couldn't suppress the rolling emotions in her heart. She had only interacted with Su Peixian a few times, and she had always felt that Su Peixian was too evil. She couldn't accept that such a girl was her daughter. Looking at Su Qingsang, Xiang Caiping felt betrayed. It was a deep betrayal. Not only had Su Qinghui betrayed her, but so had Su Qingsang. Strictly speaking, this had nothing to do with Su Qingsang, nor was it her fault. However, Xiang Caiping couldn't help but vent her anger. The huge anger made her speak incoherently. You've already acknowledged Li Qinxue. Why are you still calling me mom? Could it be that in your heart, you want to please both sides? She nodded, looked at Su Qingsang's pale face, and said in a heavy voice, that's true. What kind of person was Li Qinxue? She was the eldest daughter of the Li family. The Li group would be hers in the future. If you acknowledge her, there will definitely be endless benefits. How can you not rush to acknowledge her? What am I? Just a pitiful one. An old woman with no power or influence. I can't give you anything. That's why you couldn't wait to find your mother, right? These words were very unpleasant to hear. Su Qingsang's face turned pale. Her lips twitched. She didn't know how things had turned out this way. Mom, don't do this, don't call me mom. I'm not your mother. Xiang Caiping was in so much pain that she needed to pass it on. Your mother is Li Qinxue, not me. Su Qingsang fell silent. Her expression was full of helplessness, but in Xiang Caiping's eyes, it became her grievance. Do you feel wronged? You feel wronged. Why didn't you tell me from the beginning? Why did you wait so long to tell me? Su Qingsang, what do you mean? Tell me. Su Qingsang closed her eyes. She had nothing to say about Xiang Caiping's accusations. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear you say you're sorry. Xiang Caiping was also angry. Go away. Go to your mother's place. Go to your real mother's place. I don't need you here. Su Qingsang's mouth moved, but in the end, she didn't call her mother. She let out a long sigh in her heart. There were some things that she knew what the outcome would be. But when it really happened, she was the one who was powerless to change it. Just like now. She didn't want to hurt anyone. But in the end, she still hurt someone. Auntie. Su Qingsang thought about how to phrase it in her heart. There were some things that she still had to make clear. I really didn't think about this matter properly. I apologize to you. But there are some things that I still want to explain to you. When I found out that you weren't my mother, it happened to be when you were injured. If it weren't for your blood transfusion, I wouldn't have known that you weren't my mother. In fact, I really wanted to make the best of the mistake and recognize you as my mother. I was also prepared to bring you to live with me in Rong City. But my mother, Li Qianxue, is actually also a pitiful person. I don't care about the grudge between you two back then. I don't care about the relationship between her and my father, or between you and my father. But in this matter, she is innocent. Although I've acknowledged her, in my heart, I still respect you from the bottom of my heart. I know that you might have some feelings for Su Peijian before, but after so many years. Whether it's old Master Li or my mother, they all treat Su Peijian with sincerity. I know that you won't forgive my father. I also know that you may not forgive me or my mother. But there is one thing that I don't want you to misunderstand. That is, my mother has truly loved Su Peijian for so many years. After saying this, Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping was silent and didn't respond to her. Su Qingsang was helpless. She knew that there were some things that couldn't go back. She wanted to say a few more words, but Little Yu and Little Yu had already returned. The two of them looked at the situation in front of them and were a little confused. Auntie, you are in a bad mood now. If you don't want to see me, I won't come in front of you to attract your attention. Little Yu, you two take good care of Auntie. Little Yu and Little Yu looked at each other and finally looked at each other. They didn't quite understand why Su Qingsang had changed the way she addressed her. However, no one spoke at this time. The two of them nodded in unison. Su Qingsang glanced at Xiang Kaiping again and found that she still didn't look at her. She felt a little helpless and finally turned to leave. After she left, Xiang Caiping's body softened and she almost fell to the ground. Little Yu and Little Ning panicked and quickly went forward to help her up. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Xiang Kaiping waved her hand and sat down on the sofa, gesturing for them to leave. You guys go do your own things. I want to be alone for a while. Little Yu and Little Ning looked at each other and finally went to the kitchen together. Xiang Kaiping lowered her head and covered her face with her hands. No one could see her expression at this time. However, tears fell from between her fingers. The tears fell to the ground and splashed into small water droplets. Su Qingsang walked out of the house, still feeling suffocated. Just as she was about to go to her car, she saw Su Qinghui still standing downstairs. Seeing him, Su Qingsang really couldn't calm down. Dad, why are you still here? In this situation, she was afraid that Xiang Kaiping wouldn't want to see her. I was waiting for you. Su Qinghui looked upstairs as he spoke, then returned his gaze to Su Qingsang. Are you all right? What could be wrong with me? Su Qingsang asked. Shouldn't you be asking about Auntie now? Su Qinghui's expression was a little ugly. His lips moved. Qingsang. Are you blaming me too? Is it useful for me to blame you? Su Qingsang turned her face and looked at him very seriously. If I blame you, can you ease the pain of Auntie and my mother? If you can, then I really blame you. Su Qinghui's face turned a little pale because of her words, making his already haggard face look even worse now. Su Qingsang looked at him and couldn't bear to see him like this. She closed her eyes and said very softly, Dad. Some things have happened, and they have already happened. You have already done it, and you have already done it wrong. Then don't think about how uncomfortable you are, and how much you regret it. At this time, shouldn't you be thinking about how to make up for it? Make up for it. Shouldn't I? Su Qingsang didn't believe that at this time, Su Qinghui still didn't know where he was wrong. My mother raised someone else's daughter for more than 20 years for you. Is she wrong? Auntie mistakenly recognized someone else's daughter for you. Is she wrong? What you did it on impulse, but you did it. Then what about the people you hurt? Shouldn't you show your attitude and make up for those you hurt? Su Chenghui looked at this daughter in a daze. At this moment, it was as if he had met Su Qingsang for the first time. As for yourself, Su Qingsang bit her lip. This was actually not suitable for her to say, but she had to say it. Dad, do you really know who you love? Do you really know who is the most important person to you? Su Chenghui thought about her words and couldn't come back to his senses. Seeing that he still hadn't come back to his senses, Su Qingsang sighed again in her heart. Dad. I just want to ask you something. Who do you love? Do you love my mother? Or do you love Auntie? Su Chenghui stared at his daughter. At this moment, he didn't know how to answer. If you love my mother, then how can you have the heart to replace her child and let her raise someone else's child for more than 20 years? If you love Auntie, how can you have the heart to let her daughter call someone else mom? When she grows up, you won't recognize her when you meet her. Su Chenghui's expression was really ugly. In this short period of time, the repeated blows had long made him lose his initial gentleness and elegance. Su Qingsang couldn't bear it, but she still had to say what should be said. You have lived for more than half of your life. Do you really not know, or do you not want to face it? I'll put it this way. My mother wants to divorce you now. Don't you feel anything at all? Have you ever thought that one wrong move of yours will make you lose my mother forever? Su Chenghui's body felt as if it had been struck by lightning, and he suddenly took a big step back. Or do you not care at all because the person you love is Auntie? Chapter 447. After saying that, Su Qingsang turned around and got into her car without looking at him. However, Su Qingsang's mood had not completely calmed down until she got into the car. She was once a pure illegitimate daughter who didn't know her own background. That kind of background was not necessarily very glorious, but she lived a very peaceful life. But now, her identity had changed, and her calmness was gone. Tomorrow was the Lantern Festival, and old Master Li would call all the relatives of the Li family over. At that time, she would have a new situation to deal with. There was also the Huo family. She actually felt that it was inappropriate for her not to go home with Huo Jinyao this time. However, she couldn't leave at all because of the matter in Lin City. She suddenly missed the days when she was in medical school. Back then, all she had to do was go to school and do research. Everything was so pure and simple. But now, after sitting in the car for a long time and driving for a long time, he still felt uncomfortable. In the end, she took out her phone and called Huo Jinyao. Jinyao. As soon as the call was connected, Su Qingsang couldn't wait to call out Huo Jinyao's name. Yo. Isn't this my elusive sister-in-law? TSK. What? Why are you looking for my brother? She didn't expect Huo Manzi to answer the phone. Where's your brother? She calculated the time. Huo Jinyao had flown to Rong City and returned to the Huo family's mansion. He had already arrived and rested for a while. As soon as I came back, I was called over by my grandfather for a lecture. Sister-in-law, do you want to know what my grandfather would say to my brother? Judging from Huo Manzi's tone, it was definitely not a good thing. Since he's busy, I'll call him after he's done. My brother won't be finished in a short time. Speaking of which, isn't it your fault? My brother marrying you is like marrying an ancestor. Not only did you refuse to follow my brother to Rome City, but you also want my brother to follow you to Lin City to further his career. Forget about all that. It's the new year, and you're his granddaughter-in-law. Why don't you show your face? Speaking of which, my uncle and auntie really have good self-restraint. If it was another family, I'm afraid he won't be so easy to talk to. Huamanzi's words were full of sarcasm. Su Qingsang felt very uncomfortable and was about to hang up the phone. Hua Jiniao's voice came from the other end of the line. What nonsense are you talking about? Hua Jiniao went upstairs and found that he had accidentally dropped his phone on the sofa. He didn't expect Huamanzi to pick up his call in such a short time. Huamanzi's expression was a little ugly. She just so happened to be sitting there. Unexpectedly, Hua Jiniao caught her red-handed. Hua Jiniao took the phone and glanced at her coldly. Only then did he go upstairs. Qingsang. How can you say that you're fine? Su Qingsang was really a little nervous now. Grandpa is angry. I told you it's okay. Hua Jiniao walked to the end of the corridor on the second floor, where there was a study that belonged to him. After entering the door and isolating the noise from the outside, his voice became gentler. Don't worry. Manzi was spouting nonsense. Ignore her. He said that, but how could Su Qingsang believe him? She thought that after tomorrow, she might as well go back to Rong City. However, she was afraid that Li Qinxue would overthink again. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang felt a headache. Don't worry about Manzi. Tell me, why did you call me? Su Qingsang blinked and thought of what had happened that day. She sighed and told Hua Jiniao about it. Hua Jiniao, do you think I did something wrong? What does this have to do with you? No. In fact, Su Qingsang really couldn't get over it. I shouldn't have been so curious in the first place. If I had kept pretending that I didn't know anything, I wouldn't have been so curious. I will really treat Xiang Kaiping as my mother. Actually, there was nothing bad about it. Isn't it? It's unfair to your mother if you think like that. Hua Jiniao understood that she was being stubborn. She couldn't accept the fact that Xiang Kaiping had spoken ill of her. Have you ever thought that you could pretend that you don't know anything? What about your dad? He has made up his mind to take revenge on your mother. Have you ever thought about it? If you want to pretend for the rest of your life, what if your dad doesn't agree? By the time your mother is in her 70s or 80s, she won't have the ability anymore. Say it again. When the time comes, your mother won't know where her daughter is for the rest of her life. Worst comes to worst, she might be angered by your father and something bad might happen to her. Hua Jiniao didn't finish his sentence, but Su Qingsang understood. There were some things that she couldn't do as she pleased. If Li Qianxue didn't know about it, she could live happily. But if the day that Hua Jiniao said really came to pass, wouldn't that be even more miserable? Thank you, Hua Jiniao. Su Qingsang finally came back to her senses. She smiled bitterly and said, I was thinking too much. I think Xiang Kaiping hasn't recovered yet. When she recovers, I think she might go to Su Peixian. As for your mother, don't think about anything else now. Just stay with her for a few days. Okay. Su Qingsang nodded and didn't object. Hua Jiniao thought for a moment and said, by the way, I've already told Qing Xianyun. When you come, go directly to the hospital under his name. It's a private hospital. The fees are high, and the doctors' salaries are high. You won't be so tired. Su Qingsang was about to say yes, but then she remembered what Zhang Qiubai had said on the phone. But my teacher heard that I'm going to Rong City. He wrote a letter of recommendation for me. He recommended that I go to Rong City Hospital. Private hospitals were good. But there were more patients in public hospitals, and they could make better use of their skills and research. Okay. It's up to you. Hua Jiniao wouldn't interfere in Su Qingsang's affairs in this aspect. You decide. Su Qingsang nodded. Hua Jinyao never interfered in this aspect, which made her very grateful. After chatting with Hua Jinyao for a while, Su Qingsang was in a better mood. After hanging up, her body relaxed a little. Looking at the neon lights on the road in front of her, she murmured softly. Hua Jinyao, I miss you. Su Qingsang's mood was much better, but Su Qinghui's mood fell to the bottom. He staggered into his car, and Su Qingsang's words kept flashing in his mind. In fact, old Master Li had said those words to him before, but at that time, he didn't take them to heart at all. In his opinion, he had already been so successful. There was nothing to lose. He felt that everything was under his control, and he wouldn't let himself lose anything that he cared about, whether it was people or things. But now, he was full of uncertainty. Su Qingsang's words, Li Qianxue's words, and old Master Li's words. Even what Hua Jinyao had said before. Every sentence turned into a ripple that kept reverberating. Wave after wave surged towards him, almost drowning him. Many memories flashed through his mind, bit by bit. From the first time he got along with Xiang Kaiping, to the chance encounter with Li Qianxue at the company. How did he get involved with Li Qianxue? Su Qinghui thought that he didn't remember. But in fact, he remembered it quite clearly. That year, he had just jumped from a company to Li Corporation. Originally, his dream was to enter the world's top 500 companies. He thought about how to succeed quickly. To become a superior person. In fact, at first, he only wanted to use Li Corporation as a stepping stone. But to his surprise, he met Old Master Li. Old Master Li was very resourceful in the business world back then, and his business philosophy was quite compatible with Su Qinghui's. Because he met Old Master Li by chance. So he entered Li Corporation. Originally, he only wanted to use Li Corporation as a stepping stone, but because Li Corporation felt that it was a good opportunity for him to show off his abilities. At that time, Su Qinghui had an extraordinary enthusiasm and devotion to work. At the same time, his relationship with Xiang Kaiping was almost settled by his mother. Su Qinghui's family used to live next to Xiang Caiping's family. He was 2 years older than Xiang Kaiping. At that time, both of their parents were both working, and they had no time to take care of them when they were busy. Xiang Caiping's mother was a nurse, and she was even busier than Su Qinghui's parents. Therefore, Su Qinghui's parents would bring Xiang Kaiping over to play when they had nothing to do. Later, an accident happened. Xiang Caiping's father passed away, and her mother became even busier. Without her parents to take care of her, Xiang Kaiping lived like an orphan. Because of this, Su Qinghui's mother would bring her over to play when she had nothing to do. She gradually became a child of Su Qinghui's family. When she had nothing to do, she would eat and do her homework at the Su family. She even had a special room in the Su family for her to rest. Su Qinghui was reminded by his parents every day to take good care of his sister. He did the same. It was not a difficult thing to take care of his sister. They were childhood sweethearts. When they grew up, they naturally developed into a couple. Then, when they grew up, they got married and had children. Su Qinghui pitied Xiang Kaiping. He regarded her as a little sister of his. He had been given the responsibility of taking care of her since she was young. Su Qinghui had no objection to marrying Xiang Kaiping. It had become a habit for him to take care of Xiang Kaiping. It didn't matter if he took care of her for the rest of his life. The two of them had a verbal engagement, and they also set the date of their engagement and marriage. It was also at that time that he met Li Qianxue. She and Xiang Kaiping were completely different types of people. She was flamboyant, bright, and domineering. The first time they met, she pointed at his plan, questioned him. And he retorted very rudely. He didn't think there was a problem with his plan. Li Qianxue was clearly deliberately making things difficult for him. However, he also didn't know that his retorts and his rudeness became special in Li Qianxue's eyes. After all, at that time, who in the Li Corporation didn't look at Li Qianxue's eyes? Li Qianxue took a fancy to Su Qinghui. After going against each other again and again, she became more and more certain of her feelings. She liked Su Qinghui, and she thought that she had to get him. However, Li Qianxue was actually a little arrogant. When she found out that Su Qinghui had a childhood sweetheart, it wasn't that she didn't think of giving up. However, later on, the two of them competed for a client together. At that time, the Li Corporation wasn't like it was now, where everyone was eager to cooperate. That client was very difficult to deal with. The two of them went to several times separately, but they couldn't get the client. In the end, Li Qianxue decided to go together. Sure enough, she put down her pride and cooperated with Su Qinghui. The two of them went together, and that difficult client was actually taken down by the two of them. This was the first time Su Qinghui saw Li Qianxue's ability. It was also the first time Li Qianxue discovered that when Su Qinghui wasn't at odds with her, this man was like this. She couldn't help but invite him to celebrate the success of their first cooperation. Su Qinghui was young and full of mettle. When the two of them talked about that client, they couldn't help but drink a few more glasses. In the end, they were both drunk. As for what happened after that, it was hard to say. It was unknown who started it and who took the initiative. Anyway, when Su Qinghui woke up the next day, he faced the scene of Li Qianxue sleeping naked next to him, and old Master Li's gloomy face. Su Qinghui was sure that this was Li Qianxue's plan. She deliberately made him drunk, and she called old Master Li. He didn't go to work. He thought about whether he should resign, but he didn't want to. He had just been promoted and was already a department manager. If he resigned now, he would be a little unwilling. However, if he didn't resign, he hated Li Qianxue for setting him up. Under such circumstances, when Xiang Kaiping asked him why he didn't go to work, he didn't know why he rolled with Xiang Kaiping again. It was a mess. He himself felt that he was a mess at that time. However, before he could figure it out and decide whether to resign or not, old Master Li sent someone to call him to work. About you and Qianxue, as long as you marry her, I can pretend that nothing has happened. Su Qinghui was proud. He refused. He submitted his resignation. Half of it was avoidance, and the other half was guilt. For more than a week, he was with Xiang Kaiping day and night, trying to make up for it. Xiang Kaiping didn't know that she had a relationship with Su Qinghui for many years. Now seeing Su Qinghui treat her more gently and considerately, she didn't doubt it. She only felt happy. Looking at the gentle and careful Xiang Kaiping, Su Qinghui seemed to feel less annoyed. However, he didn't expect that after that one time, Li Qianxue would actually get pregnant. She was pregnant with his child. He felt even more confused. He insisted on resigning and didn't want to be with Li Qianxue. However, old Master Li began to pressure him. He had nowhere to go if he left the Li Corporation. But at this time, his mother found out about these things. Su Qinghui was already the only son of the third generation. Mother Su couldn't let Li Qianxue abort the child. She begged him to marry Li Qianxue and personally went to Xiang Caiping's mother to apologize. She said that Xiang Kaiping and Su Qinghui were not fated. Xiang Kaiping didn't expect such a thing to happen. In a rage, she said that the marriage between the two of them didn't count. She said that she would never marry Su Qinghui. In the end, Su Qinghui married Li Qianxue. He only found out after the marriage. At that time, not only Li Qianxue was pregnant, but Xiang Kaiping was also pregnant. Later, he was obsessed and thought that all this was because of Li Qianxue's scheme. In anger, Su Qinghui impulsively switched the child. Chapter 448. But now, because of Su Qingsang's words, Su Qinghui began to think about the answer after the impulse. In fact, he already had the answer in his heart, but he didn't dare to face it. He didn't dare to face his own mistakes. Did he really hate Li Qinxue? Yes. He did hate her at that time. But he hated himself more. He hated himself for not being strong enough and for not thinking of a solution in time. He hated himself for not sorting things out with Li Qinxue and getting together with Xiang Kaiping. It led to more chaos. It was like making another mistake in order to make up for one. The end result was that the mistake was getting bigger and bigger. It was so big that it was too late for him to undo it. Su Qinghui stared at the building in front of him blankly. He realized that he had unknowingly driven the car home. Yes. This was his home. He had lived here for more than 20 years. After his parents passed away, he regarded Old Master Li as his father. Other than Old Master Li, Su Peixian was his daughter, and Su Yusin was his son. And Li Qinxue, Su Qinghui thought of Li Qinxue's face. He thought of the time when the two of them were always at odds. She was really beautiful. He couldn't deny that. Also, she was very capable and ambitious. In business, the two of them could be said to be perfect. After that cooperation, she got pregnant and forced him to get married. After she gave birth to the baby, she threw herself back into work. With the previous cooperation, even if Su Qinghui hated her for forcing him to marry her, he had to admit that she was talented in business. She was also very daring to think and act, and the two of them complemented each other well. Over the years, the Li Corporation was able to grow bigger and bigger, and it was also because of the efforts of the two of them. Other than business, Su Qinghui thought of the first few years of marriage. Li Qinxue knew that he didn't like her, so she tried her best to be good to him. She cared about him in every possible way. At that time, he hadn't been working for long. In addition, because of his family background, he didn't care so much about his image. But after marriage, his image was many times better than before. Because his clothes all year round were bought and matched by Li Qinxue. Her family background determined that she also had a good eye. Every night, she would prepare the clothes for him to wear when he went out the next day. Not only his clothes, but everything related to him, she did it herself. Initially, she had really made up her mind to be a good wife. She had even tried to learn how to cook. However, he really didn't have the talent, so he gave up. However, he had deliberately ignored all the good things that she had done for him. He hated her very much. He blamed her for Xiang Caiping's departure, and he blamed her for his own grievance of having to marry her. He did not treat her well at all. He did not even sleep with her for a long time afterwards. If he hadn't drunk too much, Su Yusin wouldn't even have been born. But it was also that time. He discovered the hidden thoughts in his heart. He realized that he actually had a desire for Li Qinxue. How could this be? So he didn't care that she was shy and happy at the time, and he didn't care that he was the one who had violated her while he was drunk. He had thoroughly humiliated her. Tell her not to waste her efforts. He would not fall in love with her, nor would he accept her. He would never. It was also from that day onwards that Li Qinxue's attitude towards him finally changed. She began to give up. However, she didn't expect that she would be pregnant again after that one time. After Su Yusin was born, Li Qinxue began to focus on her son. It had to be said that Su Peixian was slowly growing up at this time. When she was young, she was still very cute. She loved to act coquettishly and liked to laugh. With Su Peixian around, the atmosphere in the house slowly became better. Su Yusin was also very cute when he was young. He didn't act like a boy, but he was more considerate to Li Qianxue than Su Peixian. Because of their two children, Su Qinghui and Li Qianxue began to maintain a respectful, married life. On the surface, Li Qianxue still treated him the same as before, treating him as her husband. But he knew that it was different. In private, Li Qianxue finally gave up on him. If it weren't for old Master Li and their two children, perhaps they would have divorced a long time ago. When he found out that Li Qianxue's attitude had changed, he didn't know how he felt at that time. He could only convince himself that yes, this was good. That was good. He didn't love Li Qianxue in the first place, and she was the one who forced him to marry her. But only he knew in his heart that it wasn't good, not good at all. He didn't like Li Qianxue's cold face. He hated that she began to lose him in her eyes. He couldn't help but start to think that Li Qianxue actually didn't love him at all, right? Otherwise, how could she give up so easily? But he didn't think that it wasn't so easy to give up. That was because she slowly gave up after many years of effort and still didn't get a response from him. He couldn't figure it out, and he didn't want to think about it. He stubbornly thought that he would wait for the future to reveal Su Peixian's background. He was so obsessed with taking revenge on her, stubbornly wanting to see Li Qianxue's face change. But did he really want to take revenge on her? No. He slowly began to not want to take revenge on her. But every time he saw Su Qingsang, he couldn't help but be afraid. That kind of emotion was too complicated, so complicated that he couldn't be too good to Su Qingsang. When Su Qingsang went to college, he couldn't wait to ask Su Qingsang to move out. He thought that when Su Qingsang got married, he would give her a dowry. He thought that he would make the best of the mistake. But sometimes when he saw Li Qianxue's cold face in private, he couldn't help but waver. Why should he give up? He wanted to take revenge. He wanted to let Li Qianxue know what she had done wrong. But did Li Qianxue really do anything wrong? No. She didn't. Su Qinghui closed his eyes weakly. No. Only now was he willing to admit it. Li Qianxue didn't do anything wrong. All the fault was caused by him. What did he mean by getting drunk? What did he mean by alcohol? If he didn't really have that kind of feelings for Li Qianxue, even if he was drunk, how could anything really happen? The so-called drunken sex was just an excuse to cover up his inner desire. If he was willing to admit it, he would know that he had long fallen in love with Li Qianxue. At a time when he didn't know. Because she was so different, gorgeous, flamboyant, like the sun, so that he couldn't move his eyes at all. He loved Li Qianxue, but he couldn't admit it, because deep in his heart, he still had a faint sense of inferiority. He was just an ordinary person from an ordinary family. But Li Qianxue was the daughter of the Li family, the future successor of the Li family. He wasn't sure if Li Qianxue's feelings for him were temporary or sincere. The inferiority in his heart made him refuse Li Qianxue. He didn't even hesitate to use Xiang Kaiping as an excuse. He and Xiang Kaiping grew up together. They were childhood sweethearts, and the elders of the two families arranged for them to be married. He thought that was love. In fact, he had a sibling relationship with Xiang Kaiping, but there was no love between a man and a woman. Otherwise, why would he dare to face his inner desire and have sex with Li Qianxue after he got drunk? It was funny that he didn't understand at the time. He thought that his pity for Xiang Kaiping was love. He also felt inferior in front of Li Qianxue because he couldn't compare to her family background. His childish and ridiculous pride made him do a series of wrong things. In the end, he made more mistakes. Irredeemable. Su Qinghui suddenly laughed out loud. He was too stupid. He was really too stupid. Why didn't he realize his feelings earlier? Why didn't he realize it earlier? Li Chinchua was already different in his heart. Old Master Li should have seen through his feelings long ago, right? That was why he kept reminding him to think clearly about what was most important to him. Unfortunately, he was blinded by greed and didn't seriously think about what was most important to him. When he thought clearly, he was already irreparably wrong. His phone suddenly rang. He froze for a moment and picked up the phone from his seat. Li Chinchua's number was displayed on the screen, which made his heart beat faster. He seemed to have suddenly returned to many years ago, when he first met Li Chinchua. He stared at the phone for a long time before picking it up. His heart was beating very fast. He had a lot to say to Li Chinchua. He wanted to tell her that he had been wrong all along. Su Chenghui. Li Chinchua's cold voice was on the other end of the phone. It was a familiar voice, but at this moment, it sounded extremely strange. I heard from Lawyer Chen that you won't sign. A simple sentence was like a basin of cold water poured on Su Chenghui's head. His body instantly stiffened. I'm telling you, don't think about playing any tricks. If you still have the idea of giving the family property to Su Peijian, you should give up. I won't let you succeed. Her sharp words were no longer as gentle as Li Chinchua had been to him at first. They sounded very harsh. Su Chenghui was very uncomfortable. He wasn't used to such a sharp Li Chinchua. Chinchua, I don't care what you want to do. I'm telling you, I'm getting a divorce. Li Chinchua thought that he was dissatisfied with her conditions and became more and more angry. Su Chenghui, I've given you everything that should be given to you. Don't think about what I shouldn't have given you. After so many years, I admit that even if I did something wrong back then, I helped you raise your daughter for so many years and let my daughter suffer so much. I'm even with you, right? When Li Chinchua said this, she paused for a moment and calmed down. Su Chenghui, let's part on good terms. If you insist on having your way and refuse to sign, then I don't mind falling out with you. I'll reveal Peijian's identity as an illegitimate daughter to the entire Lin City. I want to see who will be embarrassed when the time comes. Chinchua. Su Chenghui didn't expect Li Chinchua's attitude to be so fierce. Chapter 449. After saying this, Li Chinchua hung up the phone without thinking. In fact, she had raised Su Peijian for more than 20 years. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about what Su Qingsang had said before. She didn't want to ruin Su Peijian unless it was absolutely necessary. Su Peijian would become an illegitimate daughter and wouldn't be able to raise her head in Lin City. However, Su Chenghui's refusal to sign annoyed her. In her opinion, Su Chenghui was simply greedy. She felt that she had gotten too little from them. Or was it that he hadn't had enough revenge? Did he want to continue? Either way, Li Chinchua wasn't willing to accompany him. Su Chenghui was stunned for a long time when he was interrupted. His heart, which had been beating wildly just now, slowly calmed down. He looked at the phone for a long time and called Li Chinchua back. Su Chenghui, what else do you want? Chinchua. I won't sign. Su Chenghui seemed to have finally found his voice. He looked at the Li family's mansion in front of him. Listening to Li Chinchua's breathing on the other end of the phone, he spoke very seriously, word by word. You are the most precious to me. You Li Chinchua didn't expect to hear this. What do you want? I don't want to divorce you, Su Chenghui said very seriously. Su Chenghui said very seriously, now I finally know that you are the one I cherish the most. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the phone. Li Chinchua sneered. Are you trying to use this method to make me agree not to divorce you? I'm not. I'm telling you, don't even think about it. Li Chinchua's voice was even angrier than before. Su Qinghui, put away your dirty thoughts. If you think that you can make me not divorce you with a few sweet words, you're dreaming. After saying this, Li Qianxue hung up the phone without thinking. But even after the phone was hung up, she still felt that she couldn't take it. She couldn't help but call Su Qinghui again. The day after tomorrow, at the latest. If you don't sign, I'll let the whole Lin city know about Su Peixian's background. That's all. After saying this, Li Qianxue hung up the phone and turned it off. When she looked up, she found that Su Qingsang had arrived and was standing at the door looking at her. Feeling a little uncomfortable, she stood up and walked towards Su Qingsang. Why didn't you tell me when you came up? Aren't you downstairs accompanying Grandpa? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded and looked at Li Qianxue holding her hand. Grandpa is playing chess with Yusin. I don't really understand it either. I came to look for you. Just now, Nanny Zhang said that it's almost time to eat, so she asked me to call you downstairs. Okay. Li Qianxue calmed down and took Su Qingsang's hand. Thinking that she might have heard him on the phone just now, he felt a little uncomfortable. Qingsang, you won't blame me, right? Why should I blame you? I'm afraid you'll blame me for being too ruthless and kick your father out. After all, Su Qingsang and Su Qinghui were father and daughter. She was afraid that Su Qinghui would blame her. If you really blame me, there's nothing I can do. Me and Dad. I really can't live on anymore. I understand you. I won't blame you. It was a miracle that Li Qianxue could endure it until now. If it was any other woman, she would have already flared up. That's good. Li Qianxue held Su Qingsang's hand and walked outside. From now on, your grandfather and I, as well as you two, will depend on each other. Su Qingsang glanced at her and bit her lip. She seemed to be in a dilemma. What's wrong? Aren't you happy to live with me? Li Qianxue was really worried. She didn't forget. She didn't have a good relationship with Su Qingsang before. No. Su Qingsang still decided to tell the truth. Mom, I know you just recognized me and can't bear to leave me. But I'm married to Hu Jinyao after all. He's going back to Rong City now. It's not right for me to still be here. I'm thinking if I should go to Rong City in a few days. No. Li Qianxue held her hand tightly. How can you leave? I just recognized you. Mom. There's still a long way to go. Su Qingsang thought of Hu Manzi's words. Hu Jinyao has a big family at home. I've only gone back once since we got married. Now I'm not going back for the new year, and I'm not going back for the holidays. It's really not good. Then. Li Qianxue said a few words, but couldn't say anything. When she got married, her status was higher than Su Qinghui's. Su Qinghui's parents almost always flattered her. Later, less than 2 years after Su Yusin was born, Su Qinghui's parents passed away. She didn't even have a proper mother-in-law. Even so, it didn't mean that she didn't understand the ways of the world. What kind of family did Hu Jinyao come from? It wasn't that she didn't know before. In the past, she thought that Su Qingsang was lucky to marry into a family like Hu Jinyao, and that she might not be able to bear the responsibility of being the eldest granddaughter-in-law. Now hearing Su Qingsang say that, she began to feel bad again. But no matter how bad she felt, she knew that Su Qingsang was telling the truth. She was already married and was no longer alone. Thinking of this, Li Qianxue's heart was upset again. Look at you, I've only known you for a few days. You didn't spend more time with me. Su Qingsang didn't know what to say. She also felt very sorry for Li Qianxue. Mom, I'm sorry. Okay. If you want to go, go. But you have to go 2 days later. Tomorrow is definitely not possible. A few days later, let Mom arrange it. Su Qingsang was very surprised. She looked at Li Qianxue blankly, and for a moment, she thought that she had heard wrong. What? Do you think I won't let you go? Li Qianxue really wanted to do that. Now I feel that Hu Jinyao is getting off too easy. I didn't like him in the past. Now I don't like him even more. She didn't love her daughter enough. She didn't love her daughter enough. Thinking about it, she felt that Hu Jinyao was getting off too easy. Mom. Su Qingsang smiled. Don't worry. I'll definitely come back to see you. Okay. Who wants you to come back? I've thought about it. I'll go with you. Li Qianxue really couldn't bear to part with her daughter. Anyway, your grandfather and I haven't been out for a long time. We'll book plane tickets and go to Rome City together for 10 days to half a month. That's good. I haven't had much fun in Rome City myself. Su Qingsang smiled, feeling that the dark clouds in her heart had dissipated. She hooked her arm around Li Qianxue's arm. Mom, thank you. Li Qianxue's concession was actually for her. Su Qingsang's heart was slightly touched. Don't thank me, silly child. You and I never need to say thank you. Li Qianxue suddenly stopped and looked at Su Qingsang with a serious face. I also want to be a selfish mother. But I want you to be happy more. She already owed Su Qingsang a lot. How could she have the heart to delay her marriage? The so-called husband and wife were actually mutual. She also knew how much Hu Jinyao had done for Su Qingsang in the past. If Su Qingsang wanted to live a happy life with Hu Jinyao in the future, it was also very important to think from another perspective. Su Qingsang bit her lip and felt her eyes become a little moist. Qingsang. I've been a failure in my life. It's also very hard. Because it's very tiring to give unilaterally and not get anything in return. Although Hu Jinyao doesn't like him very much. But if he treats you well, you have to treat him well too. Otherwise, after a long time, his heart will become cold. Li Qianxue was talking about her and Hu Jinyao, but Su Qingsang knew that she was also thinking about herself. Mom, don't worry. I know. It's good that you know. Su Qingsang thought about it and couldn't help but say, Mom, you're still young. If you can really meet a good man in the future. In fact, it's okay to start over. Why? You don't like your own father and want to find a stepfather. Su Qinghui had broken Li Qianxue's heart. How could she be in the mood to find a good man? However, she didn't want her daughter to worry, and she didn't want Su Qingsang to think too much. She held Su Qingsang's arm and walked downstairs. Don't worry. Even at this age, I'm still as beautiful as a flower. I can still handle 1 or 2 men. I'll find a young and handsome one later. That's good. I'll help you to consider when the time comes. When the two talked about these things, they were like a real mother and daughter. It was as if the estrangement of the past 20 years didn't exist at all. The Lantern Festival. Compared with the desolation during the Spring Festival, the Su house was much more lively today. Old Master Li was happy to have his granddaughter back. Although he couldn't announce it to the world and let the entire Lin city know that Su Qingsang was the real daughter of a rich family. But it was still possible to let the relatives of the Li family know. Among the relatives of the same generation as Old Master Li, there was a cousin of Old Master Li and a cousin of his. The rest were the descendants of these two people. There were also a few other relatives from the side branches. They were distant, but they still had contact with each other. Old Master Li invited these people, and they came early in the morning. The servants received the order, set up tea early and began to serve these guests. Su Qingsang was still upstairs. Li Qianxue felt that this was the first time her daughter showed up. Even if it was only relatives, it had to be grand. Yesterday, she had asked someone to send a dress over, and today, she opened her safe. In it were the jewelry she had collected over the years. Take a look and see which one you like. Li Qianxue, who had just recognized Su Qingsang, couldn't wait to give her all the good things. It was Su Qingsang's first time here. Looking at the jewelry, she felt a little dizzy. Mom, you don't have to be so dramatic, do you? Yes. Li Qianxue looked at the clothes her daughter was wearing. Take a look and see which one you like. I'll give them all to you, but you'll wear one today. The mother and daughter picked out the jewelry, while Old Master Li and Su Yusin downstairs entertained the guests. No one said what it was about. They waited for Su Qingsang to come downstairs. At the same time, at the gate of the courtyard outside the garden. As soon as Su Peijian got out of the car, she saw the cars in the parking lot in the courtyard. There were many cars parked there, and she recognized a few of them. They were the relatives of the family. She had seen them drive before. In the distance, she could still hear the laughter in the house. Su Peijian suddenly felt a little upset. Chapter 450. Su Peijian was supposed to stay in her apartment that day. However, when she called Li Qianxue earlier, she didn't say if she could go back. She didn't dare to call Su Qinghui. It was this uneasy feeling that made her stay in the apartment for the whole day. Although someone took care of her daily life, how could it compare to home? Yesterday was fine, but today was the holiday. Whether it was on Weibo or WeChat moments, they were all celebrating the holiday. Su Peijian really couldn't stand it anymore. She really didn't want to stay alone. Even if she risked being scolded, she had to go home. Staying with her parents was better than staying in the apartment alone. However, she didn't expect to see such a busy scene as soon as she returned to the Su family. She suddenly felt sad. Even if she wasn't at home, they could still celebrate the holiday happily. Su Peijian couldn't tell how she felt. In the past, she felt that her parents loved her, but now she felt that she was a little self-righteous. She didn't hold back her anger, so she quickly walked inside. She really wanted to ask her parents if they didn't care at all that she wasn't at home. Upstairs, Su Qingsang looked at the jewelry and felt that her eyes were blurry. She looked at Li Qianxue silently. Mom, you've changed 3 sets. I think the one just now is very good. You don't need to change anymore. No, I still feel that it's not luxurious enough. Li Qianxue really wanted to put all the jewelry in the room on Su Qingsang. After looking around, she finally picked up a set of pink diamond jewelry. I want them to know that my daughter deserves the best. Su Qingsang couldn't refuse Li Qianxue's kindness. She could see it in the past few days. If she didn't let Li Qianxue make up for it, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to get over it. Moreover, these things really weren't much to Li Qianxue. In the end, she didn't stingy and let Li Qianxue put the set of jewelry on her. Li Qianxue took a step back and looked at Su Qingsang. My daughter is so beautiful. Mom is beautiful too. Although today's banquet was a little rushed, Li Qianxue wasn't unprepared. She had asked someone to bring the dress over yesterday. Her dress was light pink, and Li Qianxue's was white. Although the color was different, the style was very similar. Especially the dark rose pattern embroidered on their chests. When the two of them stood together, people would think that they were a pair of beautiful sisters. Oh right. I heard that you have a good friend. Why didn't you invite her today? Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. She hadn't told Shi Mengwan about staying in Lin City. She thought she was already in Rome City. Her background was too complicated, and she couldn't explain it clearly in a short time. Su Qingsang planned to tell her about it after today. She has work to do. Let's talk to her in a few days. Li Qinshue's expression suddenly changed. Qingsang, don't tell me you still don't want to acknowledge me. That's why you didn't tell your friend. Mom, what are you thinking? Su Qingsang felt a little helpless toward Li Qinsue. She didn't know if it was because of the previous loss that Li Qinsue was particularly concerned about her. She felt a little helpless. That's good. I'll treat her to a meal sometime next time. As Li Qinsue spoke, she tucked a strand of hair that fell from Su Qingsang's cheek behind her ear. Qingsang, in the future, your friends, your colleagues, and Hua Jinyao's relatives in Rome City. I want to get to know them all. Don't think that I'm annoying. I always feel that it's not real. When I think about how Su Qinghui once wanted to send you to an orphanage, my heart can't stand it. Li Qinsue even felt lucky that Su Qinghui hadn't lost the last trace of humanity. If Su Qingsang was really sent to an orphanage by him. Now even if she knew that Su Peijian wasn't her daughter, how could she find her daughter in this big world? Mom, Dad isn't that kind of person. Su Qinghui might have thought about it back then, but he didn't do it after all. Don't mention him. Li Qinsue was annoyed at the mention of Su Qinghui. Especially yesterday, in order not to divorce, he even said that she was his most precious person. Li Qinsue felt that it was more disgusting than eating a fly. She had been married to Su Qinghui for so long, but she couldn't see that he was such a hypocritical person. Okay. Don't mention it. Mom, let's go down. Just now, she heard faint laughter coming from downstairs. Most of the guests should be here by now, right? Let's go. Li Qinsue glanced at Su Qingsang again, then finally held her hand and led her downstairs. Just as they walked to the stairs, they met Su Yusin, who had come to pick them up. Su Yusin looked at the mother and daughter in similar clothes in front of him and touched his nose. Mom, I have 2 sisters now, right? You only know how to talk nonsense. Li Qinsue was also in a good mood. She had always maintained herself well. Standing next to Su Qingsang, they did not look like mother and daughter, but more like sisters. Come. 2 beautiful ladies, please give me this honor. Take your hands and go downstairs. Su Yusin bent down and reached out to the 2 of them. Su Qingsang wanted to laugh, but she also felt a little touched. She put her hand in Su Yusin's. However, Su Yusin still handed her hand to Li Qinsue, then stood next to Li Qinsue. The 2 siblings followed Li Qinsue downstairs, one on the left and one on the right. Li Qinsue looked at her son and then at her daughter. Suddenly, she felt that as long as they were there, nothing else mattered. On the other side, when Su Peijian walked to the gate, she met Xiaoyu, the maid of the Su family. When she saw Su Peijian, she was shocked. Miss. Wasn't Miss in the United States? Why was she back? No. Madam said it yesterday. In the future, the Miss of the family would be Miss Su Qingsang. But now Su Peijian was back. What should I do? Su Peijian was displeased by Xiaoyu's shocked expression. She glared at her. What are you doing? Don't you recognize me? Miss. Xiaoyu thought of what Madam said today and was a little anxious. As servants, they didn't know much about the master's affairs. But this morning, they were reminded by the housekeeper. It was the day when Su Qingsang returned to the family. Since Su Qingsang was the miss of the Su family, Su Peijian was naturally not. Xiao Yu knew Su Peijian's temper well after working in the old mansion for so many years. She had a bad temper. She always meant what she said. If Su Peijian knew what happened today, she didn't know what would happen later. Xiao Yu was very anxious now. She wanted to stop Su Peijian, but she didn't have the ability. She didn't want to stop her. She was afraid that the housekeeper and Li Qianxue would blame her later. Mississippi. You came here on such a cold day. It must be very cold, right? It's quite windy outside today. Why don't we go to the kitchen, have a bowl of hot soup, and then see Madam? There were 2 doors in the kitchen. One was from the dining room, and the other was a small door for the servants to go in and out. Xiao Yu wanted to take Su Peijian to the kitchen and ask Li Qianxue what to do. Li Qianxue was annoyed by Xiao Yu's words. I'm not cold. Get out of the way. I want to see my mother. No, Mississippi. I'm really doing this for your own good. You see, it's really cold today. You see, your face is red. Why don't we go into the kitchen first? Get out of the way. Su Peijian pushed Xiao Yu. Xiao Yu was caught off guard and took 2 or 3 steps to the side. Unprepared, Xiao Yu retreated 2 or 3 steps to the side. She was even more anxious now. Su Peijian was like this. If she really let her in, she was afraid that she would cause trouble. Miss, listen to me. What did you call me? Su Peijian seemed to have only just realized. She was always addressed as eldest miss at home. Su Yusin was the young master. But today, Xiao Yu kept calling her Mississippi. Who are you calling miss? Don't you know the rules? I'm telling you, I'll ask my mother to fire you. After saying this, Su Peijian was about to rush inside again. Xiao Yu was so anxious that she didn't care anymore. She stopped Su Peijian. Miss, you can go in if you want. But listen to me, there's a guest inside today. If you're unhappy about something, you should calm down. Guest? What guest? Su Peijian sneered. Is there any guest in the house that I don't know? Do I need you to talk? Mississippi, if you call me miss again, I'll sew your mouth shut. Su Peijian pointed at Xiao Yu fiercely, and her fierce eyes scared Xiao Yu. She wanted to persuade her again, but Uncle Zhang happened to come out at this time. Seeing Su Peijian, Uncle Zhang was also stunned. He didn't expect Su Peijian to come back so suddenly. The servants of the Su family didn't know, but Uncle Zhang, who had lived in this big house with old Master Li for half of his life, knew it very well. Since the real miss was back, the fake one was naturally worthless. Today was Su Qingsang's good day. It was also the first time she showed her face in front of people. How could Uncle Zhang let Su Peijian go in and ruin it? Miss, you're back. Look at you, why didn't you call to tell me? I could have sent someone to pick you up. Uncle Zhang, where are my parents? Su Peijian looked inside and didn't want to be polite to Uncle Zhang at all. Xiao Yu stopped me from going in. You won't stop me from going in too, will you? Of course not. My good Mississippi. But now there are many people inside, and it's noisy. If you ask me, you must be covered in dust on your way back. Why don't you go upstairs and tidy up and come back? If Su Peijian had just been impulsive to see Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui. Now, she could completely guess that something was very wrong with today's events. She slightly narrowed her eyes and glanced at Uncle Zhang and Xiao Yu's faces. She pushed the 2 of them away, and before they could stop her, she quickly rushed into the gate. At the same time, Li Qianxue had already gone downstairs with her son and daughter. They walked to the staircase. In the living room, old Master Li saw his daughters coming downstairs and was the first to stand up. As soon as he stood up, the others also stood up. As soon as they stood up, they blocked Su Peijian's view. Chapter 451. Qing Sang, Yusin. Come here. Old Master Li reached out to Su Qing Sang and Su Yusin, especially to Su Qing Sang. His eyes were filled with love. The bad feeling in Su Peijian's heart grew stronger and stronger. Her body began to stiffen as she stood there. What was going on? Why was Su Qing Sang standing beside her mother? Why did Grandpa speak to Su Qing Sang in such a gentle voice? Su Peijian's mind was full of questions. She couldn't help but want to rush forward, but her body couldn't move. Behind him, Uncle Qin and Xiao Yu had already entered. The two of them wanted to stop him, but they couldn't. After looking at each other, they shrunk their heads and went back to the kitchen. Forget it. I'll just pretend I didn't see it. Anyway, Su Peijian could be considered the owner of the house. They had no right to stop it. Su Qing Sang was a little nervous when she saw the large group of people in the living room, even though she had met these relatives before. But at that time, she was just an illegitimate daughter, a nobody in the Su family. But now, it was completely different. She couldn't help but glance at Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue stood behind her. When their eyes met, she held her hand tightly and led her to Old Master Li. I have invited everyone here today because I have something to announce. When Old Master Li said this, he was still a little emotional. He was old, and his health was not particularly good. Because of Su Qing Sang, she hadn't been able to sleep well. Previously, we all knew that the Su family had another daughter. That is, Qing Sang. Old Master Li took Su Qing Sang's hand and stood beside Su Qing Sang with Li Qianxue. Because of Li Qianxue's warm and soft hands, Su Qing Sang felt the tension in her heart dissipate a lot. In fact, Qianxue gave birth to a child in the hospital at the same time as someone else. After the baby was born, the nurse switched the baby. Old Master Li spoke casually, but the other guests at the scene all stared at him with wide eyes. Was it a mistake? How was this a mistake? As a matter of fact, we only found out about it recently because of an accident. So Su Qing Sang is Qianxue's daughter. This matter can't be faked. We've already done a paternity test. Whispers and gasps could be heard from the audience. Those gazes once again landed on Su Qing Sang, and those gazes with different meanings made Su Qing Sang feel uneasy. The reason I called you here today is to explain Qing Sang's background to you. Now that I know Qing Sang's identity, I will naturally give her the treatment she deserves. Old Master Li's words were loud and clear as he looked at the people in the middle of the living room. He didn't finish his sentence, but his meaning was clear. Su Qing Sang had been switched at the wrong place, so everyone thought she was an illegitimate daughter. But now, she was no longer an illegitimate daughter, but a legitimate daughter of a wealthy family. Therefore, these people had to consider their attitude towards Su Qing Sang in the future. Also, Su Qing Sang was now the granddaughter of the Li family. She was also the eldest daughter of the Su family. If others dared to look down on and be rude to Su Qing Sang like before, the Li family would not let it go so easily. Those who were invited today were all relatives of the Li family. All of them were shrewd people. After hearing what Old Master Li said, what else could they not understand? Great-grandfather Li, who was Old Master Li's cousin and Li Qianxue had to call him Grandpa, smiled and nodded. So you've recognized your granddaughter? It seems that this is really a joyous occasion. As he spoke, he took out a box from his pocket and handed it to Su Qing Sang. Here. Since you've recognized your granddaughter, this is a greeting gift. Su Qing Sang didn't take the box immediately. She naturally knew great-grandfather Li, but she turned to look at Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue patted the back of her hand and said, "This is a gift from your grandpa." You should accept it. Old Master Li's cousins were of the same generation as him. Before they came, Old Master Li had informed them of the situation. Su Qingsang accepted the box and bowed to Great-Grandfather Li. Thank you, Grandpa. Okay. Great-Grandfather Li nodded repeatedly, obviously very satisfied with Su Qingsang's politeness. Great-Grandfather Li gave her a greeting gift. That great-aunt was not stingy. Your grandpa told us in a hurry, and I didn't prepare anything. I also have a little toy here. You can wear it and play with it. Great-aunt took out a velvet box, which looked like a bracelet. Su Qingsang took it and nodded to her. Thank you, Great-aunt. The two elders had already expressed their gratitude. Their nephew was of the same generation as Li Qianxue, so they had to express their gratitude. However, they had come in a hurry today, unlike Great-Grandfather Li, who had received the news beforehand. For a moment, the group of people didn't know what to give. Great-Grandfather Li's son suddenly remembered that there was a piece of jewelry in his car that he had prepared as a gift. It was also very expensive, so it was a suitable gift. He was about to take it, but unexpectedly, when he turned around, he saw Su Peijian standing outside of their circle. Niece. Just now, Li Qianxue was busy introducing people to Su Qingsang, and Old Master Li had been staring at the guests. He planned to directly throw out the paternity test report if anyone questioned it. Su Yusin stood with a few people of the same generation. The group of people didn't pay attention to what was happening outside of the group of people in the living room, so no one noticed that Su Peijian was also there. When he called her niece, Su Qingsang glanced at him. At the same time, she also saw Su Peijian. The moment their eyes met, Su Qingsang clearly saw the shock in Su Peijian's eyes, and she saw Su Peijian, so did Old Master Li and the others. The moment Old Master Li saw Su Peijian, he felt a little awkward and uncomfortable. In fact, it was natural for them to recognize Su Qingsang. However, Su Peijian had been with them for so many years, and they had feelings for each other. Although they hated what Su Qinghui had done, no one wanted to blame it on Su Peijian. After all, ignorance was not a crime. In the past few days, Li Qianxue and Old Master Li had been thinking about Su Peijian's situation and what she would do in the future. Because of this consideration, the father and daughter had specially discussed how to treat Su Peijian in the future. After so many years of raising her, she was an adopted daughter. They would pick a time for Su Qinghui to explain the situation to her. Later, they would give her a dowry so that she could get married in a grand way. It could be considered that they had done their best. However, no one would have thought that Su Peijian would suddenly come back, and she happened to see the scene of them bringing Su Qingsang to meet people. For a moment, Old Master Li and his daughter felt a little uncomfortable. In just a short while, Su Peijian had already recovered from the stiffness she'd felt earlier. Chapter 452. Su Peijian was standing outside the crowd. Su Qingsang was in the limelight. She watched how Old Master Li and Li Qianxue protected Su Qingsang and made her the daughter of the Su family. For a moment, she thought she had misheard, that there was something wrong with her ears. How could Su Qingsang be the daughter of the Su family? How could she be Li Qianxue's daughter? Li Qianxue's daughter was obviously her. It should be her. Su Peijian closed her eyes and tried hard to control the expression on her face. She did not want to look too ferocious. It's hard though. No one in the living room spoke. Su Qingsang's family background was announced. Everyone knew who Su Peijian was, and there was no need to ask anymore. Even if he didn't know where Su Peijian came from or whose daughter she was, he would never forget. But looking at the current situation, what else was there to be confused about? Everyone was silent as they watched the once high-spirited Miss Su walk into the middle of the crowd. Li Chinchue had raised Su Peijian for more than 20 years, so she knew her daughter very well. At this moment, seeing her walking directly towards her, she inexplicably felt a little guilty. But that kind of guilty conscience only lasted for a moment. She believed that all these years, her motherly love for Su Peijian had come from the bottom of her heart. She had never done anything wrong to Su Peijian. Even now, she and Old Master Li still planned to give her the status and treatment that an adopted daughter of the Su family deserved. Thinking of this, Li Chinchue calmed down a lot. Peijian is back. You must be tired from the journey back. Let's go upstairs and rest. Li Chinchue looked at Su Peijian with a glimmer of hope in her eyes. He hoped that Su Peijian would be sensible and understand his hints. He hoped that she would know what kind of occasion this was. She had doted on Su Peijian for so many years, and she really treated her as one of her successors. She thought that Su Peijian might be able to discern something like that. I'm not tired. It wasn't that Su Peijian didn't see Li Chinchue's hint, and it wasn't that she didn't know how ugly she looked right now. However, there were some things that she really couldn't control. For example, she was inexplicably replaced by someone else. She didn't even know what had happened. Mom, Grandpa. I heard something just now, but I didn't quite understand what it meant. Mom, why don't you tell me? She spoke calmly, her clenched fists showing obvious restraint. When she saw Su Qingsang's face, she suddenly raised her hand. How did you change your daughter? Shouldn't I be your daughter? In fact, she also wanted to ask Su Qingsang why. What do you mean by mistaken identity? How could there be a mistake? She would never believe such a lousy excuse. It had been fine for so many years. You came all the way here to say that you made a mistake. Su Qingsang subtly took a small step back. It wasn't that she was afraid of Su Peijian, but she didn't want to make her presence as small as possible. She didn't want Su Peijian to think that she was showing off. Su Yusin noticed her movements. He silently squeezed her hand and took a step forward. Sister. Go back to your room and rest first. We'll talk later. Don't call me sister yet. Su Peijian looked at Su Yusin. She didn't miss Su Yusin's little action just now. She felt even worse. She's your sister now, isn't she? Li Chinchue frowned and finally realized something. She had spoiled Su Peijian too much. Peijian. Yusin said that we'll talk later. I don't want to talk later. I want to talk now. Su Peijian's voice was quite rude. She pointed at Su Qingsang, who was standing next to Li Chinchue. She's just an illegitimate daughter. I just want to know what right she has now, and what right she has. She can stand here. Li Chinchue didn't like to hear the words, illegitimate daughter, now. If it weren't for Su Qinghui's selfishness and ruthlessness, how could her daughter have grown up with the title of illegitimate daughter? That was a misunderstanding. I said it just now. When she was born, the doctor made a mistake. Qingsang is not an illegitimate daughter. What about me? Su Peijian couldn't help raising her voice. If she's not an illegitimate daughter, then what am I? Ha! Tell me. What am I? Her questioning tone made Li Chinchue a little uncomfortable. The room was full of relatives. She really couldn't lose her temper like this. Peijian. I'll say it again. If you have anything to say, you can talk later. Go upstairs and rest for a while. I said I'm not tired. I don't want to rest. Su Peijian was quite stubborn. Can't I ask? Don't I have the right to know? Am I not your daughter? Su Peijian's anger only grew as she questioned him in return. Old Master Li's face was a little ugly. It was only a matter of time before Su Peijian came to find him, but he didn't expect it to be so sudden. "Patient," Old Masterly said. No matter what, today was not only a holiday, but also a good day for Su Qingsang. He hoped that everything would go smoothly. "Patient, since you're back, take a rest. There are so many guests at home now. If you have anything to say, you can talk later." Old Master Li's words were light, but there was an irresistible majesty. If it were any other day, Su Peijian would definitely listen to him. However, today was not a normal day. Instead, because of Old Master Li's words, Su Peijian became angry. She took a step forward and directly faced Old Master Li and Li Qinxue. "So, now I'm the one who is not welcomed in this family, right? So, before I know what I've done wrong, I've already lost the right to speak in this family, right? Is that so?" Li Qinxue frowned. For the first time, she found that this daughter of hers was a little too aggressive. "Why aren't you saying anything? Isn't that the case?" Su Peijian was really angry and unhappy. She didn't hide her unhappiness. "Grandpa, Mom, don't I even have the right to understand the situation? Aren't you going to tell me what happened?" Su Qingsang didn't speak. At this time, it was inappropriate for her to say anything. Su Yusin was silent. No matter what, he and Su Peijian had been siblings since they were children. If possible, he didn't want her to make things too ugly. Li Qinxue felt a headache coming on. She hated Su Qinghui more and more. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have to face such a situation. If it weren't for Su Qinghui, she could be happily accompanying her original daughter now. Su Peijian suddenly smiled and nodded heavily. Her gaze swept across the people in front of her. "Good. Really good. It's really good." She suddenly stood in front of Su Qingsang and stared straight at Su Qingsang's face with her beautiful almond-shaped eyes. "They refuse to answer my questions, but you should be able to, right? Su Qingsang." She raised her chin and stared at Su Qingsang's face. "You should be able to explain how you went from an illegitimate daughter to the eldest daughter of the Su family. You should also be able to explain what methods you used to make my mother, my brother, and my grandfather all stand on your side. Right. Where's my dad? Why isn't my dad here? I also want to ask my dad if he was also bewitched by you." Su Qingsang pursed her lips into a straight line. It wasn't that she didn't know how to answer Su Peijian's question. And no matter how she answered, Su Peijian might not accept that answer. "Peijian." Li Qinxue couldn't listen to it anymore. In the past, when Su Peijian made things difficult for Su Qingsang, she didn't know Su Qingsang's identity, so naturally, she didn't feel much. But now that her biological daughter was being embarrassed by Su Peijian in front of her, she couldn't stand it anymore. "Watch your words. Watch what I should watch." Su Peijian was getting angrier. The more Li Qinxue defended Su Qingsang, the angrier she got. "What can I watch? I'm about to be robbed of everything. Can't I ask clearly? How my mother, my brother, and my grandfather were taken away from me? Can't I ask?" She didn't look at Li Qinxue and stared at Su Qingsang again. Tell me, what kind of method did you use? What kind of trick did you use? Tell me. I just want to know, why are you here, why are you robbing me of everything?" Su Qingsang clenched her hands by her side and bit her lip slightly. Before Li Qinxue could speak, she pressed her arm and turned to face Su Peijian. "If you want to know why, we can tell you. But are you sure that you want to say it here?" Her eyes were extremely clear, without a trace of dissatisfaction or unhappiness in them. She looked at Su Peijian like this, and her eyes showed the most sincere advice to her. "If you really want to know, we can say it here. But do you really want to listen? Do you really want us to say it now, here?" She wanted to remind Su Peijian that she wasn't the only one here, not just the few of them. If Su Peijian continued to make a scene, her identity would definitely be exposed. Li Qianxue had decided to give her the dignity that an adopted daughter of the Su family deserved. But if Su Peijian insisted on continuing to ask, how could others not guess that she was the illegitimate daughter of the Su family? With her personality, could she really stand her identity changing from a legitimate daughter of a wealthy family to an illegitimate daughter? Su Peijian bit her lip and looked at Su Qingsang almost with a bit of resentment. Her eyes, which kept changing emotions, were obviously filled with resentment and dissatisfaction. Tell me. Why not? Why can't you tell me? Su Peijian raised her voice when she said the last 3 words. She lost her usual calmness and demeanor. Anger made her sharp, and she desperately wanted to know an answer. Li Qianxue frowned. At this time, she was slightly disappointed in Su Peijian. Peijian. If you really want to know, come with me. As mother and daughter, Li Qianxue was willing to protect Su Peijian's dignity and her. However, Su Peijian didn't want to think that way. She looked at Li Qianxue and only felt that she had changed. Did she want her to disappear from here now? Did she want her to get out of here quickly so that she could make room for Su Qingsang? She stared at the people in front of her, who used to be her closest family. There was obvious pain and anger in her eyes. Chapter 453. Li Qianxue's brows were tightly knitted together. She had already lost her initial patience with Su Peijian's interrogation. If you really want to know, then, let me explain. A voice that didn't belong here sounded. There was exhaustion in the elegance, and helplessness in the hoarse voice. Li Qianxue looked up and saw the enemy she had been entangled with for half of her life. Su Qinghui, who shouldn't be here at this moment. Her expression suddenly became even more unsightly. She crossed her arms in front of her chest, and her eyes were endless cold. What was he doing here again? He was the one who caused all the trouble and pain today. Why did he come again? Did he want to watch the show? Old Master Li didn't like Su Qinghui either. However, he had lived longer than everyone present, so he was able to maintain his composure. Dad. Su Peijian looked at him as if she had seen her savior. She walked toward Su Qinghui quickly, and her eyes were already uncontrollably red. Su Qinghui looked at Su Peijian with a very complicated expression. He turned his head and looked at Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue looked noble and elegant in her white dress. Even though there was obvious anger on her face, it only made her look a little more lively. She was so beautiful. Su Qinghui sighed in his heart. Why had he been so blind and ignored such a wife for so many years? What was even more hateful was that when he realized this, his marriage with Li Qianxue had come to an end. His heart was a little sour. He looked at Li Qianxue with thousands of words in his eyes, but at this time, he couldn't say a word. Dad. When Su Peijian found that Su Qinghui had been ignoring her, she couldn't help but stomp her feet and call him again. Peijian. Su Qinghui looked away and at the same time, suppressed the bitterness in his heart. When he saw Su Peijian's unwilling face, he felt guilty for the first time for this daughter. His mistake was really irreparable. The most important thing now was how to make up for it. Peijian. Come with me. These 6 words were filled with an indescribable sense of regret and sorrow. Su Peijian didn't want to go. At this time, she had a hunch that what Su Qinghui was going to say was something she didn't want to hear. She suddenly didn't want to know. I want to listen right here. Su Qinghui's face darkened. He thought of what Xiang Kaiping had said to him. He didn't think so in the past, but today was the first time he felt that his daughter had been spoiled rotten by him. Come with me. These 4 simple words were filled with a domineering aura that Su Peijian could not refuse. In this family, Su Peijian was least afraid of Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui was the one she was most afraid of. That was because Su Qinghui gave people the impression that he was a gentleman who would never get angry. In fact, everyone in the family knew that when Su Qinghui was really angry, no one could stand it. Su Qingsang swallowed, suppressed all the unwillingness in her heart, and followed Su Qinghui. Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue with a complicated look in his eyes. "You guys, continue." After saying this, he took Su Peijian upstairs. Su Qinghui left with Su Peijian. However, the relatives and friends in the family were still in a state of confusion. What the hell was going on? It wasn't just the others. Great-grandfather Li and his great-aunt were also very curious. Great-grandfather Li was a man, so it was not convenient for him to speak. His great-aunt was not polite. "Qianxue, can I ask, this Peijian, now, she is the daughter of the Su family." Li Qianxue had a faint smile on her face. She didn't want to say a word in detail. Everyone present began to ponder in their hearts. The daughter of the Su family meant more than one thing. An adopted daughter was also a daughter, an illegitimate daughter was also a daughter. The biological daughter could still be regarded as her own daughter. He just didn't know what Su Peijian was now in the Su family, other than Su Qingsang being the eldest daughter of the Su family. Su Qingsang breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Su Qinghui. If it was possible, it would be much easier for Su Qinghui to explain to Su Peijian. However, when she looked at Su Qinghui just now, he looked even more haggard than yesterday. She looked at Li Qianxue, who was chatting with her great-aunt's family. She didn't take Su Qinghui's appearance to heart at all. She sighed in her heart. It seemed that Li Qianxue had completely let it go. "Sister, are you worried? Are you worried?" Su Yusin stood beside her and saw that she didn't look too good. "Don't worry. Mom and I won't let anything happen to you. I'm not worried." She shook her head. She couldn't say that she saw the way Su Qinghui looked at Li Qianxue just now. She had seen that kind of look before. She knew what it meant. It was clear that Su Qinghui had finally realized his feelings for her at such a time. However, when she looked at Li Qianxue again, she didn't care about Su Qinghui at all. When Li Qianxue loved Su Qinghui, Su Qinghui didn't love her. When Su Qinghui fell in love with Li Qianxue. But Li Qianxue didn't love Su Qinghui anymore. Su Qingsang suddenly felt that fate was playing tricks on people. It was such a rare thing to meet the right person at the right time. Su Yusin didn't know if she shook her head because she didn't want him to worry, or if she really wasn't worried. But in fact, he was a little worried. "I'm quite sad to see my sister like that." After all, they had grown up together. For so many years, he had really regarded Su Peijian as his own sister. Now that such a thing had happened to his sister, a good family had become torn apart. He felt a little sad. "Qingsang, Yusin, come here." Old Master Li was calling Su Qingsang. She glanced at Su Yusin. There were many things that were not suitable to say now. She patted Su Yusin on the shoulder and looked at him sincerely. "Don't worry. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Some things may feel sad at the time, but one day, it will all be over." Su Yusin nodded and held her hand as they walked toward Old Master Li, in the study upstairs. After listening to Su Qinghui's words, Su Peijian was stunned and couldn't move. On a day in the first lunar month, the indoor central air conditioning made the study very warm. Su Peijian only felt a burst of coldness. The coldness spread from her back all the way to her heart, and then spread from her heart to her limbs. "Dad." Su Peijian found her voice with great difficulty. She looked at Su Qinghui, her eyes full of disbelief. Are you kidding? You must be joking with me, right? Su Qinghui didn't want to hurt Su Peijian. He was also very sad to see his daughter like this. Loving Su Peijian had become a habit. If possible, he didn't want to hurt her. Peijian. I'm sorry. Su Qinghui's words were light, but to Su Peijian, it was like a bolt from the blue. Her body trembled slightly. She looked at Su Qinghui, refusing to accept this fact. Impossible. It's impossible. You lied to me. Why did you lie to me? She suddenly stepped forward and grabbed Su Qinghui's clothes. Her eyes were red. Tears gathered in the corners of her eyes. Dad, you lied to me, right? How could Su Qingsang be my daughter? How could I be that woman's child? This is impossible. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. She was very emotional. This news had really subverted her understanding. She refused to accept this fact. Peijian. Su Qinghui was speechless. It's true. If you don't believe it, you can do a paternity test. In fact, Hua Jinyao has already done a paternity test. I don't believe it. Su Peijian suddenly let go of his clothes, took a step back, and shouted at Su Qinghui, I don't believe it. I don't care. I am the daughter of the Su family. I am my mother's daughter. She seemed to think of something. She suddenly looked up at Su Qinghui. It's because of Hua Jinyao, isn't it? Yes, it's because of Hua Jinyao. Su Peijian felt that she had guessed correctly. It was because of Hua Jinyao. Because he is the CEO of Tianyu Group. Because Su Qingsang is married to him. So you think Su Qingsang is more useful to you, right? Is that right? Peijian. Su Qinghui couldn't listen anymore. What nonsense are you talking about? Isn't it? Su Peijian refused to believe Su Qinghui's words. Why did you take revenge now? Also, how did Mom know? She felt that this was the key point. Didn't you want to take revenge on Mom? If that's the case, why did you tell Mom? Why didn't you keep this secret in your heart for the rest of your life? Why? Su Peijian's whole body was weak. She fell to the ground. She couldn't face the fact that she wasn't Li Qinxue. If her identity was swapped with Su Qingsang's, didn't that mean that she was the illegitimate daughter? How could she be an illegitimate daughter? She didn't want to be an illegitimate daughter. She was the real daughter of the Su family. Su Qinghui looked at Su Peijian. He knew that it was hard for her to accept this fact. But the truth was the truth. It wouldn't change whether she accepted it or not. Peijian. Get up. I'll take you down. Dad. Su Peijian looked up at him. You're going to tell them that what my mother said just now was all false. Is that so? No. Su Qinghui shook his head. He had already made a mistake, so he would try to make up for it. I'm going to take you to your real mother. Real mother? Who? The old woman who slapped her in the face. Su Peijian couldn't stop shaking her head. The tears that had gathered in her eyes finally fell. When Su Qinghui approached, she hugged his leg. Her voice was even more pitiful than before, and it was even more unbearable. Chapter 454. Her voice was sobbing, but the meaning she wanted to express was quite clear. Su Qinghui smiled bitterly. Look. Even his daughter knew that Li Qinxue loved him very much, and so did he. However, he relied on her love for him and then squandered it endlessly. In the end, when his love was squandered, his lover was also gone. Dad. Just promise me, please. I beg you. I don't want to be someone else's daughter. I only recognize my mother. I have lived with her for more than 20 years. I know that she loves me the most. You also love me the most. I did do something wrong in the past, but you are my parents. You can forgive me. Is that all right? I beg you. I promise I will be obedient in the future. I promise I will never make you angry again. Dad. You can go and tell my mom about it. I beg of you. If you tell her, she will definitely agree. Really? As she spoke, tears streamed down her cheeks like a pear blossom in the rain. Su Chenghui couldn't bear it anymore. However, no matter how much he couldn't bear it, it couldn't compare to his regret at this time. He had already been wrong, and he wouldn't be wrong again. Su Chenghui reached out to pull Su Peijian. She hugged his legs so tightly that at first he couldn't pull her hand away smoothly. In the end, he made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and pulled Su Peijian's body up and straightened her body. Peijian, calm down. Calm down and listen to me. I won't listen. I don't want to listen. I don't want to listen to a word. I don't want to believe it either. I don't want to believe you. Liar, they were all liars. They were all lying to her. Dad. Don't you love me the most? You love me so much. How can you bear to let me be an illegitimate daughter? I don't want it. Su Chenghui's expression didn't look good. He did love Su Peijian the most. However, he didn't expect Su Peijian's attitude to be so fierce. And such a fierce attitude was actually because she didn't want to be an illegitimate daughter. Su Peijian. His tone became cold. This matter has no room for you to interfere. Dad. Su Peijian looked at him blankly, unwilling to accept it. It's useless if you don't accept it. Su Chenghui let out a long sigh. In the past, I let Qianxue and Qingsang down. The past is already a mistake. Now, I don't want to continue this mistake. Especially when he realized what was most important to him. Su Peijian kept shaking her head. She refused to accept it. Suddenly, she pushed Su Chenghui hard. I don't accept it. If he did not accept it now, he would not accept it in the future. I will never accept it. She took a step back, turned around, and ran out the door. Su Chenghui didn't expect Su Peijian to push him. He took 2 steps back. Before he could react, Su Peijian had already run out of the room. In a hurry, he quickly followed them. Downstairs. Su Qingsang recognized almost all the relatives who came. There seemed to be a lot of people, but Su Qingsang had met many of them before. He knew a little about it. Great-grandfather Li had 2 sons and a daughter. My great-aunt had 2 daughters and a son. These people were her elders. As for great-grandfather Li's grandchildren and great-aunt's grandchildren, they were the same generation as her. There was nothing much to say about the elders. After greeting them and accepting their gifts, that was it. As for those who didn't bring gifts, it didn't matter. Most of these people relied on the Li family to survive. They all said that they would make up for the gifts later. Of course, the important thing was not the gifts, but the recognition of Su Qingsang's identity. With Li Qianxue and Old Master Li's support today, Su Qingsang would be the real daughter of the Su family in the future. No one could look down on her. After recognizing her, the elders gathered together to talk. A few of the younger generation came to Su Qingsang and surrounded her to talk to her. In fact, among these people, 2 were Old Master Li's granddaughters, and 1 was the granddaughter of her great-aunt. These people used to have a good relationship with Li Qianxue. Although they didn't bully Su Qingsang, they often followed Su Peijian and mocked Su Qingsang. Now, Su Qingsang's identity had changed greatly. They also knew what good things she had done in the past. Now, he was rushing to curry favor with her. Qingsang. The person who spoke was the third granddaughter of Old Master Li. Her name was Li Yishan. She was one of the people who looked down on Su Qingsang the most in the past. Well, I've never been a good person with words. If I offended you in the past, please don't take it to heart. Why would I? Su Qingsang smiled. She really didn't care about these things. They're all small things. I knew Qingsang was easy to talk to. Li Shan smiled and looked at the two people next to her. Li Zhirong, who used to despise Su Qingsang, chimed in, yeah, you can tell by looking at Su Qingsang's physiognomy. She's a magnanimous person. Qingsang. Bai Zhenlan was the granddaughter of her great-aunt. Because she was the youngest, she was usually very spoiled at home. But now that she saw Su Qingsang, she knew that her family was not as good as the Li family. Naturally, her attitude was quite friendly. What does Qingsang like to play? Let's play together next time. Su Qingsang had laughed all day today. Her face was stiff. I don't usually play. There are a lot of things to do in the hospital. I'm usually busy. Oh right, Qingsang is a doctor. That's amazing. Bai Zhenlan's other sister, Bai Yiru, said, next time we go to your hospital for a physical examination, can you give us a number in advance? Su Qingsang didn't know how to respond. I'm no longer working at the first hospital of Lin City. It might not be very convenient. You're not a doctor anymore. Li Yishan looked at Su Qingsang. Is it because you plan to enter the Li Corporation in the future? Hearing her question, the others looked at each other and waited for Su Qingsang's answer. If Su Qingsang entered the Li Corporation, there would be more cooperation in the future. This information was very important to the family. No. Su Qingsang was a little helpless. I might have to go to Rong City. As soon as she said that, the others remembered. Su Qingsang's husband was the president of Tianyu Group, and the headquarters of Tianyu Group was in Rong City. Qingsang, you're so lucky. Another granddaughter of her great-aunt couldn't help but say, I heard that Tianyu Group is one of the top companies in the country. The most important thing is that President Huo loves Qingsang very much. The one who spoke was Li Zhirong. She was also brought to Hua Jinyao's banquet last time. To be honest, she couldn't help but envy Su Qingsang's good life. Look, the man she married was the president of Tianyu Group. Suddenly, she became the daughter of the Su family. It didn't matter how she did it, but she did it. As she said this, the others also began to flatter Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was really not used to this kind of conversation. She was thinking of finding an excuse to leave this group of people. On the other side, Su Peijian had already reached the door of the living room. As soon as Su Peijian entered the living room, she saw this scene. Those friends who usually surrounded her and were good friends with her were all around Su Qingsang now. Even through the crowd, she could clearly see the flattering faces of those people. These people were obviously different before, but now they had changed their attitude. Was it because Su Qingsang became the daughter of the Su family? Was it because Su Qingsang changed her identity? And this identity clearly belonged to her. If Su Peijian still had a trace of rationality before, now she was completely stimulated by the scene in front of her. She suddenly rushed in. She didn't look at Su Qingsang, but directly walked past the crowd to Li Qianxue. Mom. Li Qianxue was talking about some company matters with her two cousins. Since she had already decided to divorce Su Qinghui, she had to make preparations. After the divorce, Su Qinghui might not necessarily work at the Li Corporation again. Moreover, even if he wanted to stay at the Li Corporation, Li Qianxue wouldn't want to. She hated Su Qinghui now when she thought of him. She had thought very clearly that Su Qinghui couldn't be relied on in the future. Then she must add new people to replace Su Qinghui's work in the company. Just as she was engrossed in the conversation, a familiar voice interrupted her. Turning around, she saw Su Peijian's pale face. It was obvious that she had cried. Her expression was a little serious. Peijian. Why are you here? Have you rested well? This sentence had two meanings. Did Su Qinghui tell you clearly? Since you know, why are you still here? I don't need to rest. Su Peijian used to be a smart person. But now her intelligence was gone without a trace. Her reason was also gone. All that was left was anger and pain for her lost identity. Mom. Dad, I lied to you, didn't I? I'm your daughter, right? Her voice was pleading. Li Qianxue had a mother-daughter relationship with her for more than 20 years. Now seeing her like this, she felt a little suffocated. She hated Su Qinghui more and more in her heart, but her face didn't change. You are the daughter of the Su family. Don't worry, this will not change. What she said was the last thing she could give Su Peijian. Su Peijian was still the daughter of the Su family. She was also willing to give her a decent life for the sake of the fact that she had raised her for more than 20 years. But a fake was a fake. Since Su Peijian wasn't her daughter, she naturally wouldn't give her what didn't belong to her. Li Qianxue didn't think she was going too far. In fact, when she thought of Su Qingsang being wronged for so many years. As Xiang Caiping's daughter, Su Peijian had always enjoyed the benefits of her status and the title of the eldest daughter of the Su family. Her heart couldn't be softened anymore. With Su Qinghui, she could divorce or fight with her. But with Su Peijian, she was still willing to owe her a little. It's not the same. Su Peijian almost immediately understood the difference. Mom, it's not the same. She looked at Li Qianxue and grabbed her arm. Mom, not only do I want to be the daughter of the Su family, but I also want to be your daughter. I am your daughter. You raised me for more than 20 years. Isn't that right? Chapter 455. Su Peijian's tears began to gather again. In fact, she used to be arrogant and rarely cried. But today, she had the urge to cry again and again. Her hand gripped Li Qianxue's arm tightly, almost leaving a mark on Li Qianxue's arm. Li Qianxue looked at Su Peijian and felt sorry for her again. But when she saw Su Qinghui, who also appeared in the living room, it disappeared without a trace. I told you, you will still be the daughter of the Su family. I don't want it. Su Peijian shook her head and heard the coldness in Li Qianxue's words. Mom, you really don't want me. I am Peijian. Don't you love me the most? Mom. After seeing Su Qinghui, Li Qianxue waved her hand away. She felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. She glared at Su Qinghui, and the hatred in her eyes deepened. I am not your mother, she said coldly. She admitted that she was venting her anger on him. She couldn't do anything to Su Qinghui, but she could vent her anger on his precious daughter, right? You are not my daughter, and I am not your mother. Seeing Su Peijian's hurt face, Li Qianxue forced herself to turn her face away. Go back to your room and rest. There are many guests here now. Don't be rude. Don't be rude. Su Peijian looked at Li Qianxue in shock. What did she mean by don't be rude? Was she not the daughter of this family? Was she not even qualified to stay with these relatives after she was not Li Qianxue's daughter? She suddenly remembered. In the past years, as the illegitimate daughter of the Su family, what did Su Qingsang do? She shook her head hard. She refused to accept that one day she would do that. She didn't show up when there were guests in the house. She was like a shadow. She didn't want it. Mom, Peijian. Su Chenghui came over. He took Su Peijian's hand and wanted to take her away. Let's go out first. I don't want to. Su Peijian waved his hand away. I don't want to go out. Why should I go out? I am also a daughter of the Su family. She glanced at Li Qianxue and said, Mom just admitted that I'm also a daughter of the Su family. Since I am the daughter of the Su family, why should I go out? Su Chenghui's face darkened. Su Peijian's behavior gave him a headache. Peijian, come with me. I'm not leaving. Su Peijian turned around and looked at Li Qianxue. Are you really going to do this to me? Do you really not want me anymore? Are you really not going to acknowledge me as your daughter? Li Qianxue was originally willing to protect Su Peijian's dignity, but now she really didn't like her aggressiveness. In addition, Su Chenghui was still next to her. With both sides provoked, Li Qianxue spoke without thinking. Yes, I don't want you anymore. You are not my daughter either. She glared at Su Chenghui with obvious provocation in her eyes. Now my daughter is Su Qingsang. She is my daughter. Su Peijian's face was pale, and her whole body was shaking like an autumn leaf in the wind. Su Chenghui couldn't bear it. When he met Li Qianxue's eyes, he knew that she was venting her anger on him. He smiled bitterly in his heart and stepped forward to hold Su Peijian's shoulder. Peijian, let's go. It was time for him to take Su Peijian to Xiang Caiping. Even if Xiang Caiping's attitude was just as sharp and she refused to acknowledge it. But after all, they were mother and daughter. After spending some time together, there would be feelings. Don't touch me. Su Peijian stood to the side, avoiding Su Chenghui's hand and also standing opposite Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue had been standing to the side when she was chatting with others. After all, her daughter was the main character today. She hoped that Su Qingsang could get more attention. But this way, Su Peijian could clearly see the other people in the living room from this angle. Old Master Li was looking in her direction, his brows tightly knitted, and his face looked dissatisfied with her. Su Yusin, who was next to him, looked at her with a look of wanting to say something, but his eyes were also clearly looking forward to her leaving as soon as possible. Finally, it was Su Qingsang. She was still surrounded by those people. She was also looking at her. Her eyes were calm, and there was no emotion in them. But Su Peijian saw sympathy and pity in her eyes. That kind of emotion was something she could not tolerate. Who was Su Qingsang? Since when did she, Su Peijian, deserve sympathy? What right did she have to look at her like that? How could she treat her with such a condescending attitude? Su Peijian could not accept it. She glared back at Su Qingsang. Did she really think that her identity could decide everything? In her dreams. Let them wait and see. She wanted to see who would be the one laughing at the end. Peijian. Su Chenghui noticed Su Peijian's gaze, and his expression became complicated. Li Qianxue also saw the expression on her face. For the past 25 years, Li Qianxue had treated Su Peijian so well. Now, she felt as guilty as Su Qingsang. She suddenly saw her adopted daughter looking at Su Qingsang with such hatred, and she could not stand it. Peijian, stop it. Go back to your room first. Her voice was a little cold. To Li Qianxue, Su Qingsang was the daughter she owed for more than 20 years. What happened in the past was in the past. She could not take it back, but she would never allow anyone to bully Su Qingsang in the future. Even if that person was Su Peijian, whom she had raised. Her voice was full of warning. When it fell into Su Peijian's ears, it only made it more unacceptable. I'm making a scene. She wanted everything that originally belonged to her. How did she become the one making a scene? Can't I make a scene? She pointed at Su Qingsang. You didn't say anything, and you changed my identity. I can't even ask, I can't even protest, can I? She could only accept this unfair fate, couldn't she? Su Peijian. Li Qianxue could not listen to it anymore. Watch your words. Look at the situation. Your father has already told you what you want to ask. I've also told you the answer you want to know. You are not calm now. It's better for you to leave. She tried to lower her voice so that more people would not hear her. Unfortunately, Su Peijian did not appreciate it. I am not calm. Su Peijian nodded heavily. Good. 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 Very good. Anyway, it's all my fault now. It's all my fault. Okay. She looked around at the people in front of her. Her family, her relatives. And her parents, whom she loved the most. She kept nodding and looking at these people. Finally, she stomped her feet, turned around, and ran away without looking back. She moved so fast that Su Qinghui did not have time to stop her. She ran away. Su Qinghui frowned. He was about to chase after her when he met the corner of Li Qianxue's lips and sharp eyes. Chapter 456. Meeting Su Qinghui's gaze, Li Qianxue took a step forward and stood in front of him. Peijian is a little stubborn. You'd better go and comfort her. Some things were already set in stone, so he could only accept it. There was nothing he could do if he didn't accept it. Su Qinghui was silent. As soon as he turned around, he heard Li Qianxue's voice behind him. Su Qinghui. Is this what you want? Is this what you want to see? Are you satisfied now that you've seen it? He had single-handedly carried out his revenge. Now, was he happy? Was he proud? Su Qinghui's body trembled, as if all his strength had been sucked out. He didn't look back, and his back was stiff. Li Qianxue, who was behind him, obviously didn't intend to let him go. Su Qinghui, I really want to kill you. When she said this, there was even a smile on her face. People who didn't know what was going on would think that the two of them were talking about the child. Only they knew that what they were talking about had nothing to do with the child at all. Her voice was cold, and the hatred in it made Su Qinghui's heart feel as if it was being squeezed. He resisted the urge to turn around and chased after Su Peijian without looking back. It was just that from the back, it looked like he was running away in a panic. Li Qianxue didn't care about Su Qinghui. She turned around and smiled again. It was a holiday. It was another good day for Su Qingsang. She didn't want someone like Su Qinghui to affect her mood. Su Qingsang didn't say anything. She watched Su Peijian run out just like that, and she didn't know how to feel. At this moment, she really sympathized with Su Peijian. Li Zhirong and Li Yishan looked at her as if they wanted to say something. Su Qingsang smiled at them and found an excuse to go to Li Qianxue's side. Mom. Li Qianxue's attitude was very tough just now, so she was probably still feeling bad. Are you okay? I'm fine. What could have happened to me? Li Qianxue's expression was calm. In fact, she didn't really dislike Su Peijian that much. But as long as she thought that she was Su Qinghui and Xiang Caiping's daughter, she would panic. Not to mention the fact that Su Qinghui had swapped Su Qingsang's identity with hers in order to let Su Peijian live like the daughter of a wealthy family. As soon as she thought of this, Li Qianxue felt as if there was a fire burning in her heart. That fire burned until she lost all rationality. If Su Peijian was hurt because of her attitude today, she couldn't blame her. Su Qinghui was to blame. She took a deep breath and held Su Qingsang's arm. I'm fine. But you. In the future, you must always remember your identity. If someone doesn't have eyes and provokes you, you will be punished. You don't have to be polite, just teach them a lesson. If there's anything, Mom will take care of it for you. Mom. Su Qingsang finally understood where Su Peixian's arrogance came from. Who would provoke me for no reason? You think too much. I'm telling you. Which normal person would mess with Su Qingsang? He was afraid that some people would be blind. Li Qianxue recalled the look in Su Peixian's eyes when she left. She couldn't tell what she was feeling. She patted the back of Su Qingsang's hand and said, speaking of which, I shouldn't have said that to you. But today's situation, I think you saw it. I'm afraid Peixian won't want to let go. If she makes things difficult for you, you don't have to worry. You can do whatever you want. Mom. I know. Su Qingsang smiled at her and comforted her. You don't have to think too much. I think Peixian just can't get over it. She'll get better in the future. I hope so. After all, she had raised her for more than 20 years. Li Qianxue didn't want to think too badly of Su Peixian. It was okay if she just couldn't get over it. She was afraid that if she couldn't get over it, she would get herself into trouble. Or she would do something else. She looked at Su Qingsang and wanted to remind her, but thinking that Su Qingsang would soon return to Rong City, she gave up. In any case, the two of them wouldn't have many opportunities to meet in the future. Some things didn't need to be said. When Su Qingsang left Rong City, when she recovered from the shock of her child being stolen, she should be able to face Su Peixian normally. Although there were some twists and turns on this day, Su Qingsang's identity was announced to her relatives and friends. When seeing the guests off, Li Qianxue still cared about Su Peixian. She explained it to those relatives. Su Peixian would still be the daughter of the Su family in the future. Today's incident would be treated as a small interlude. To be able to survive in this circle, how many of them were stupid? She also understood. Li Qianxue still had motherly feelings for Su Peixian. Su Peixian was still the daughter of the Su family. The necessary respect and dignity would still be given to her. Li Qianxue saw the last relative off and returned to the living room. She found old Master Li sitting on the sofa, looking like he was waiting for her. Where's Qingsang? I asked her to go upstairs to rest. Old Master Li gestured for Li Qianxue to sit on the sofa before he slowly said, What do you plan to do about Peixian? Today, Li Qianxue wasn't the only one who saw the resentment in Su Peixian's eyes before she left. Old Master Li also saw it. The old man naturally thought more than Li Qianxue. For so many years, Su Peixian had occupied Su Peixian's position. She had enjoyed what she wanted, and she had gotten what she wanted. In terms of the assets under her name, Su Peixian was much more than Su Peixian. She had her own house at the age of 16, and the gifts Li Qianxue gave her at the age of 18 were all businesses that made money. When she was 20, Li Qianxue bought her a villa. Although the villa couldn't compare to this big house, it was still very valuable. There were also birthday gifts from old Master Li, gifts from Su Qinghui every year, cars under her name, and some other investments in financial management. It could be said that Su Peixian had many assets under her name. However, since these things were given to her, Li Qianxue didn't plan to take them back. Old Master Li had wanted to give Su Peixian another dowry, but seeing Su Peixian's behavior today, he was a little worried. Although what Qinghui did has nothing to do with Peixian. But you saw how she was just now. People who were not content were like snakes trying to swallow an elephant. He was afraid that what they thought was enough, Su Peixian didn't think it was enough. Dad. I know what I'm doing. If Su Peijian could recognize her identity and know her place, it would be good for everyone. If she didn't know her place and insisted on going against Su Qingsang, he was afraid that it wouldn't be so easy. It's good that you know what you're doing. Old Master Li also had feelings for Su Peijian. However, these feelings couldn't suppress the emotions of being deceived by Su Qinghui, and they couldn't suppress the anger of his daughter being bullied. Although Old Master Li gave Su Qinghui some pressure because Li Qianxue was pregnant and made him marry Li Qianxue. But if Su Qinghui really didn't want to, he could refuse. It wasn't that the Li family couldn't afford to raise a child. If he didn't agree, they couldn't tie him up and bring him to the hall. But Su Qinghui was different. He said one thing on the surface and another behind her back. He agreed to marry Li Qianxue in front of her, but behind her back, he used such a vicious method to hurt his daughter. As soon as Old Master Li thought of this, he was like Li Qianxue. No matter how much he loved Su Peijian, it couldn't offset his anger. Perhaps realizing that his tone was not very good, Old Master Li sighed. When Qingsang goes to Rong City, you don't have to stop her if she wants to come back and live there. Since the family allowed Qingsang to stay, we naturally won't kick her out. With her identity as the daughter of the Su family, even if Su Peijian were to get married in the future, Su Peijian would not be able to get married. It didn't have much of an impact. They were just afraid that she wouldn't appreciate it. At that time, as her elders, they would all be thinking for nothing. Li Qianxue didn't say anything. She thought so too. Upstairs, Su Qingsang was exhausted. She changed her clothes, picked up her phone, and called Hua Jinyao. Honey. Hua Jinyao answered the phone very quickly. Su Qingsang could vaguely hear voices on the other end of the phone. It should be the Hua family. Are you home? Yes. Hua Jinyao nodded, stood up, and walked towards the hallway with his phone in his hand. I'm at home. Great uncle and great aunt are here today. How could Su Qingsang not know that it was the Lantern Festival today? Say hello to Grandpa for me. She wanted to say that she would go to Rong City in 2 days, but she didn't say it. She decided to give Hua Jinyao a surprise. Don't worry, Grandpa knows. You only know how to coax me. I'm afraid that Grandpa is still very angry. Even Hua Manzi jumped out to criticize her. She was afraid that the elders of the Hua family would have an even worse opinion of her. Look at you, you're thinking nonsense again, aren't you? I said it's fine, so it's fine. Just stay there and keep your mother company. Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang nodded, but suddenly called his name. What's wrong? I miss you. On the other end of the phone, Hua Jinyao curled his lips. Since you miss me, stay with your mother for a few more days and come quickly. Use your actions to prove what you think of me. Hooligan. Su Qingsang bit her lip and muttered, okay. After hanging up the phone, Su Qingsang's face was a little hot. She patted her cheeks to cool it down. She threw down her phone and lay down on the bed. She was thinking about whether she should book a plane ticket back the day after tomorrow. Tomorrow, she would pack up and buy some gifts for Old Master Hua and the others. Thinking of gifts, Su Qingsang remembered the ones she bought last time. They were still in Hua Jinyao's villa. Should she go and get them tomorrow? Before that, she should say hello to Li Qianxue first. After all, she said that she would go to Rong City with her. While Su Qingsang was thinking about going to Rong City, Su Peijian couldn't let Su Qinghui catch up with her. After leaving the Su family, she got into her car. She drove as fast as she could, but in the end, she found that she had nowhere to go. The Su family was her home, but now she couldn't go back to the Su family. Her home was occupied by Su Qingsang. She could go back to her apartment, but it was cold and she was the only one there. She didn't want to go back. Chapter 457. Thinking of Su Qinghui saying that he would take her to the old woman who had beaten her, Su Peijian became angrier. Finally, she turned the steering wheel and drove to a high-end club she used to go to. As soon as she entered, she asked someone to bring a lot of wine. She was in a bad mood and wanted to drink. She came here so often that the waiters knew her. All kinds of high-end wine, which cost tens of thousands of yuan, filled the table. Su Peijian opened one of the bottles and gulped it down. She drank so fast that she choked. She coughed twice and continued drinking. She quickly drank more than half of the bottle. Su Peijian felt that it wasn't enough, so she drank the rest and opened a second bottle. She was the only one in the room. She often came to this club, so she wasn't worried about anything happening. After drinking 2 or 3 bottles of wine in a row, even Su Peijian was drunk. She fell directly on the sofa and fell asleep just like that. When she was in a daze, Su Peijian felt that she wanted to go to the bathroom. There was one in the room, but she was drunk and went outside the room. She came back from the bathroom and was about to go back to her room, but when she passed by a room, she heard Hua Jinyao's name. Hua Jinyao is really too much. He bullies people like this just because Tianyu Group is now powerful. He's simply despicable. That voice was very familiar, as if she had heard it somewhere before. Su Peijian was drunk and tried hard to remember where she had heard this voice before. He's bullying people. What can you do? I hate that we're being bullied like this now. This voice was also very familiar. Su Peijian blinked and thought about where she had heard this voice before. Isn't it? Do you know that I really hate him now? But my parents won't let me settle the score with Hua Jinyao. Come on. The person's voice was full of mockery. So what if you really come to him? That's Hua Jinyao. He's not an ordinary cat or dog. Yes. Hua Jinyao is not easy to deal with. Look, Junjiao offended Hua Jinyao and even gave up the cooperation to the Li Corporation. This was another person's voice. As soon as this sentence came out, there was no more sound. Su Peijian couldn't bear to listen any longer. With a bang sound, she pushed open the door of the private room forcefully. What happened to Hua Jinyao? What happened to Hua Jinyao? You can deal with him if you want. No matter how powerful he is, does he have 3 heads and 6 arms? Peijian. A few people were talking inside. Everyone turned to look at the door. Su Peijian glanced around. Even though she was drunk, she could still recognize the people in front of her. Luo Meishan's brother, Luo Haonan, Song Yoha's brother, Song Yangjia, and Wu Ran, who was like their tail. All that was left was Qiu Yanbao and Chang Qiuhai, and the rest of them would be gathered. The ones who spoke just now were Luo Haonan and Song Yangjia. Their mothers had an argument with Xiang Kaiping, which led Hua Jinyao to deal with their families personally. Both Xinglua Department Store and Kasong Electronics had become subsidiaries of Tianyu Group. Because of this, Luo Haonan and Song Yangjia became a joke in their circle. Madame Song and Madame Luo were almost chased out of the house by their husbands. For many days, the two families didn't go out. They were too ashamed to raise their heads. Su Peijian thought of this when she saw them. Speaking of which, she was sent away by Su Qinghui because of this. If she hadn't been sent away by Su Qinghui, Su Qingsang's identity probably wouldn't have been exposed so quickly. Thinking of this, Su Peijian was furious. She gritted her teeth. She was angry at Su Qingsang and hated Hua Jinyao. What's so difficult about dealing with Hua Jinyao? If you have the ability to complain, why don't you take some action? Luo Haonan and Song Youngjia didn't respond. In fact, it was Madame Song and Madame Luo who caused Xiang Caiping's accident. However, if it wasn't for the fact that they wanted to please Su Peijian and help her, why would they do such a thankless thing? In the end, when the problem arose, no one stood up for the Luo and Song families. It wasn't that Madame Luo and Madame Song didn't think of going to Li Qinxue. However, Su Peijian had been sent away. How could Li Qinxue be in the mood to deal with them? Moreover, the person who did it was Hu Jinyao. He didn't even give face to Su Qinghui, let alone others. Now that they saw Su Peijian, the two of them didn't look happy. Su Peijian had drunk some wine and was tipsy. She sneered and said, "What? Are you blaming me now?" Luo Haonan and Song Youngjia didn't answer, but the expressions on their faces revealed that they meant it. Blame me. Why would you blame me? I was sent abroad by my father because of this. Now my mother doesn't recognize me. I finally see it. What kinship? It's all fake. Only benefits are real. As for Li Qinxue and Su Qinghui's excuses about the wrong baby and revenge, it was all nonsense. No matter what, they had raised her for more than 20 years. Did they not have any feelings for her at all? People said that giving birth was not as important as raising. Why was it that when it came to Li Qinxue and Old Master Li, giving birth was not as important as giving birth? To put it bluntly, it was because Su Qingsang married Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao was the president of Tianyu Group, which had a partnership with the Li Group. He took advantage of his identity to bully her again and again. No one would be able to take this insult. Luo Haonan and Song Youngjia couldn't help but look at her when she said this. Thinking that she, a daughter of a rich family, had been sent abroad by the Su family, they felt a little soft-hearted. Especially Luo Haonan, who liked Su Peijian. In his memory, Su Peijian had always been beautiful and flamboyant. When had he ever seen Su Peijian look so down and down? Wu Ran stood up and looked at Su Peijian. Since you're saying that, do you have a good idea? Su Peijian looked at Wu Ran, then at Luo Haonan and Song Youngjia. Suddenly, she smiled and said, "I do have an idea. But whether it's good or not, you can listen to it." She closed the door, walked into the room step by step, and looked at the people in front of her. "Can you think of a way to deal with Hu Jinyao?" Song Youngjia was the first to not believe it. "Your family has a lot of projects with Tianyu Group now, right? Aren't you afraid that your parents will be angry with you if you deal with Hu Jinyao?" "When did I say that I'm going to deal with Hu Jinyao directly?" Su Peijian looked at the three of them with cold eyes. "We can't deal with Hu Jinyao in a short time. After all, he has Tianyu Group behind him. But I know what Hu Jinyao's weakness is. It's not easy for you to deal with Hu Jinyao, but it's not difficult to deal with his weakness." Wu Ran narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Peijian's angry face. "Are you talking about your family's illegitimate daughter?" "Yes." Su Peijian gritted her teeth, and her eyes were even fiercer than before. "I'm talking about the illegitimate daughter who can't be shown in public." At the end of this sentence, the three men actually felt a chill slowly rising from their backs. Su Yusin had to report to school the next day. He was already a senior in high school. Although he didn't care about the heavy homework, he still needed someone to watch over the Su family. Therefore, after discussing with the family, they decided to stick to the original plan. Old Master Li went to Rong City with Li Qinxue and Su Qingsang. Su Yusin stayed behind to watch over the family. As for the Li Corporation, Li Qinxue planned to give up her power and let the managers of the departments under her take on some heavy responsibilities. These people were the company's elders and were very loyal to the company. Even if they weren't as capable as Su Qinghui, Some things could be communicated a few times. As for Su Qinghui, Li Qianxue didn't forget to call Lawyer Qin and ask him to be in charge of Su Qinghui's signing. What she didn't expect was that Su Qinghui still didn't answer. This made Li Qianxue furious. She felt that Su Qinghui was too shameless. Why didn't he sign? Su Qinghui, what do you want? Do you really think that I don't dare to reveal Su Peixian's identity? Li Qianxue and the others had already booked tickets to Rong City tomorrow. She hoped to end things with Su Qinghui before she left. Qianxue, Su Qinghui's voice sounded tired. Peixian is missing. Li Qianxue was stunned for a moment and suddenly sneered. Didn't you chase after her yesterday? How could she be missing? Su Qinghui couldn't explain it. He had always been mature and prudent. He wouldn't do something like driving fast on the road. His drivers were all the same. However, Su Peixian's car was much faster. I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find her. Her phone was also turned off. I'm very worried about her now. Li Qianxue couldn't say the harsh words that came out of her mouth. After all, Su Peixian had been raised by her for more than 20 years. If you have time, why don't you ask her friends? Someone will know. I know who you're talking about. I looked for them yesterday, and they all said that they didn't see her. Li Qianxue's heart was stifled, and her tone became unpleasant. So what? Are you still thinking that I should care about her like I cared about Peixian in the past? Do you want me to look for her now? I didn't mean that. Then what do you mean? Why won't you sign? Li Qianxue became even angrier when she thought of this. Do you think that if you say that Peixian is missing, I will forget that I want to divorce you? Let me tell you, it's impossible. Her tone was too firm, and Su Qinghui felt bitter in his heart. Qianxue. I said it. I don't want a divorce. All right then. Li Qianxue was also annoyed by his repeated words. If that's the case, then I'll hold another party tomorrow. I'll invite all the famous people in Lin City. I want to restore Qingsang's identity as the legitimate daughter of the Su family openly. Su Qinghui thought about Su Peixian's reaction yesterday. He knew that if Li Qianxue really did that, Su Peixian would be the first to fall. Chapter 458. To sign or not to sign made Su Qinghui struggle and struggle. He couldn't make such a choice in such a short time. He couldn't bear to let Su Peixian fall into such a situation. To Su Peixian, that was worse than taking her life. But Li Qianxue, how could he bear to leave Li Qianxue? He knew Li Qianxue's personality too well. As long as he signed the contract, there would probably be no chance between the two of them. Thinking of how Li Qianxue looked when he saw her yesterday, Su Qinghui's heart was bleeding. He closed his eyes and said weakly, Qianxue. Do we really have to go this far? Su Qinghui, don't you think it's ridiculous for you to say this? Li Qianxue almost laughed out of anger at Su Qinghui. Don't you know what you've done? Do you really think that after you used such a vicious method to deal with me, I can still be with you as if nothing happened? Do you really think that after you let Peixian be my mother and daughter for more than 20 years, I will turn a blind eye? Will I be willing to acknowledge her as my biological daughter? If she had accidentally mistaken Su Peixian, she might have been willing to tolerate it. She would have continued to treat Su Peixian as her own daughter and raised her by her side. But what was the reality? The mother-daughter relationship between her and Su Peixian was orchestrated by Su Qinghui. How could she tolerate it? No matter how much Li Qianxue loved Su Peixian, it couldn't compare to the pain of being cheated and hurt. Especially when such deception and hurt came from the man she loved the most. She hated him as much as she loved him at the time. This hatred reached its peak when she thought of the grievances Su Qingsang had suffered for so many years, as well as the fact that she was almost sent to an orphanage when she was born. Su Qinghui, let me tell you, I really want to drink your blood and eat your flesh. Don't think that I don't know about your dirty thoughts. Listen, I've written it clearly in the agreement, and I've given you everything I can. If you still want to push your luck or have other thoughts, I won't let you succeed. Qianxue, I didn't. I'm not. Su Qinghui couldn't defend himself. He knew that he had lost his credibility in front of Li Qianxue. I don't want to sign it because I don't want to divorce you. Qianxue, believe me, my feelings for you are sincere. Believe that you are sincere to me. I believe that you didn't care about me for more than 20 years, and on the day of the divorce, you realized that you couldn't live without me. When he said that, even Su Qinghui felt that it was ridiculous, not to mention Li Qianxue. But it was true. How could Li Qianxue believe him? She sneered. He snorted heavily. Yes, I believe you. Do you think I'll believe you so that you won't leave so that I can get more benefits and fight for more benefits for Su Peixian? Li Qianxue gritted her teeth. She had no idea that Su Qinghui could be so shameless. I don't want to waste time with you. I want to see your signature before tonight. Otherwise, we'll just wait and see. After hanging up the phone, Li Qianxue still felt very angry. He patted his chest with all his might, suppressing his anger. But it was very difficult. If it weren't for her strong personality, she would have cried at this moment. Li Qianxue, look at you. You were really blind back then. What kind of man did you like? She had thought that even if Su Qinghui's family background was ordinary, he wouldn't love her. But in the end, he had some pride and backbone. Now it seemed that he didn't have any backbone or pride. For the sake of a little property, he could even tell such a shameless lie as if it were true. No. Perhaps he had pride and backbone in the beginning. However, these 20 years of living a comfortable life made his life more and more smooth, and he became more and more spineless. Su Qinghui, you bastard. You plotted against me like this. I won't let this go. Li Qianxue's eyes were red. She really couldn't swallow the anger in her heart. She thought that she had originally planned to save some face for Su Qinghui. Since he was so shameless, why should she have any scruples? She took out her phone and was about to make a call. Before she could press the number, Su Qingsang knocked on the door and came in. Mom. Seeing her daughter, Li Qianxue put down her phone. You're back. Su Qingsang had gone to Hua Jinyao's villa to get the gifts she had chosen before. Li Qianxue was naturally prepared. However, those gifts were given by her, and her daughter's gifts were given by her daughter. The person who prepared them was different, so the intention was naturally different. Are you tired? I asked you to bring Yusin with you, but you didn't listen. Mom. Yusin was going to school today to report. Why did I ask him to follow me? There aren't many things anyway. You even asked Xiaoyu and Uncle Zhang to help me. How can I be tired? After Su Qingsang finished speaking, she noticed that her mother's eyes were a little red. Mom, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well? I'm fine. Li Qianxue was also dizzy from anger just now. Now that she saw her daughter, she calmed down. No matter how unbearable Su Qinghui was, he was still Qianxue and Yusin's biological father. If his reputation was ruined, Qianxue and Yusin wouldn't be able to raise their heads in Lin City in the future. Moreover, Su Qingsang married into a family like the Hua family. That kind of family valued reputation the most. Forget it. In any case, she was the one who owed that enemy. He could only endure this anger for now. In the end, it was hard for him to calm down, and he couldn't help but show some emotions on his face. Su Qingsang had been through a lot and was no longer the innocent girl she used to be. Thinking about it, the only thing that could give Li Qianxue a headache was Su Qinghui or Su Peixian. Su Peixian had made a scene yesterday, so her mother probably didn't like her first. As for Su Qinghui, there was only one possibility. He refused to sign the divorce papers. Thinking of the look in Su Qinghui's eyes yesterday, Su Qingsang had mixed feelings. After thinking for a moment, she sat down next to Li Qianxue. I've asked Hu Jinyao about it. He had a villa and an apartment in Rong City. The environment was not bad, and there was more than one place. We'll go there tomorrow. Do you prefer to live in an apartment or a villa? Don't bother him. Li Qianxue patted her hand. We can just stay in a hotel. I'm accompanying you to your home visit. Speaking of which, this is the first time the in-laws are visiting your home. If we live in each other's house, although it's reasonable, it's inevitable that we'll be inferior. Mom, are you going to stay in a hotel? You silly child. Li Qianxue looked at her daughter. No matter how much she doted on her, she couldn't make it up to her enough. When you said that you were leaving, I asked someone to inquire about it. Just buy a house near the Huo family. Even if the Li family can't compare to the Huo family, we still have some money. Mom. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it. Why did these people like to buy houses so easily? You don't have to be so wasteful, do you? How is it wasteful? Li Qianxue held her hand. When you marry over there, no matter how much Hu Jinyao gives you, it will still belong to their family. Women have to be strong and have money, so they won't be looked down upon. It's one thing to be able to stand on your own, but it's another thing to be treated by your family. I'm not only going to buy one house, I'm going to buy a few more. When the time comes, they'll all be under your name. Mom. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed. When I was in the Huo family, old Master Huo gave me a villa. You're giving me another house. Why do I need so many houses? You little girl, who would complain about having more properties under their name? So what if you have more houses? When the time comes, you can choose which one you like. If you don't like any of them, it doesn't matter. You can just rent them out and collect rent. Seeing Su Qingsang's refusal, she felt very emotional in her heart. All these years, her daughter had lost so many things and suffered so much. Looking at the children of other families in Lin City, which one of them didn't have more than a dozen properties under their name? She was the only daughter who didn't have anything from her family since she was a child. Thinking of this, Li Qianxue began to feel bad again. Don't refuse. You see, when you got married, I didn't even prepare a dowry for you. Although this matter is already over. But Mom really feels bad. Don't bother about these worldly possessions with me. Su Qingsang wanted to say something, but Li Qianxue squeezed her palm hard. Qingsang, Mom has to say something unpleasant. It's naturally good that you like Hu Jinyao's good relationship now. But I've seen through this man. There are very few men like your grandfather in the world. Flowers don't bloom for 100 days, and people don't have 100 days of happiness. You have your own business in Rong City. What if Hu Jinyao has any ill intentions in the future? You also have a place to retreat. Although it's convenient to return to Lin City. I won't let his family bully you. But after all, it's more than 2 hours by plane. Just accept it as a way to calm Mom's heart, okay? Since she said that, Su Qingsang couldn't say anything more. After thinking about it, she couldn't help but defend Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao isn't that kind of person. Mom, don't worry. It's good that he isn't. Li Qianxue thought of her father. I hope he can always be good. I also hope that you and your husband can be happy. After all, it's too hard to find a man like your grandfather in this world. Li Qinshua's mother had hurt her body when she gave birth to Li Qinshuo and had never recovered. She was ill for a few years and passed away early. After she passed away, old Master Li didn't trust anyone else to take care of his daughter. Secondly, he couldn't forget his wife, so he never remarried. If it weren't for this, Li Qinshuo wouldn't have been spoiled by old Master Li, so she didn't have much scruples at all. That was why she plunged headfirst into Su Qinghui's demon barrier and couldn't get out. Let's not talk about the past. Now, Li Qinshuo just wanted Su Qingsang to live a happy life. Mom. I know. Su Qingsang had only been back for a few days, but Li Qinshuo had been thinking about everything for her. People's hearts were made of flesh. Su Qingsang wrapped her arms around Li Qinshuo's waist and hugged her like a daughter who really relied on her mother. Chapter 459. Xiang Kaiping was a good person. She hoped that Su Peixian could let go of her prejudice and get along well with her. Relationships were nurtured. Sincerity for sincerity, and they were mother and daughter. How could they continue to hate each other? Su Qingsang really hoped that Su Peixian could think it through and accept Xiang Kaiping. Otherwise, Xiang Caiping's life would be too pitiful. Su Peixian looked at the apartment building in front of her and narrowed her eyes slightly. She naturally knew this place. She had been to Su Qingsang's old apartment once. Xiang Kaiping, that old woman, lived there. She was her biological mother in name. Su Peixian sneered and touched her nose. A trace of disdain flashed in her eyes. How could someone like Xiang Kaiping compare to Li Qinshuo? Not to mention her family background, just her temperament and appearance. Xiang Caiping's face was weather-beaten. She looked to be in her 50s, and her face was full of wrinkles. But what about Li Qinshuo? She had taken good care of herself. She looked to be in her early 30s. And the way she talked and did things she usually did. Even when Li Qinshuo was angry, she would try her best to maintain her elegance. Xiang Kaiping, on the other hand, had dared to hit her. The two of them could not be compared at all. But now, such an old woman had become her biological mother. Su Peixian gritted her teeth. Thinking of that slap, a trace of hostility flashed in her eyes. She blinked her eyes and suppressed the hostility. The most dangerous place was the safest place. She knew that Su Qinghui was looking for her. He wanted to find her and let her meet Xiang Kaiping. She would never have thought that she would come right to her doorstep like this. Xiang Kaiping stayed in the apartment for the next 2 days. It wasn't that she had nowhere to go, but that she had been shocked and couldn't think of anywhere else to go. She had been listless for the past 2 days. She would eat when Xiao Ning and Xiao Yu called her. She didn't want to go downstairs, and she was even more unwilling to get up to do rehabilitation. It had only been 2 days, but she had become a lot less energetic. She couldn't understand how Su Qinghui, the sunny young man, had become such a person. Was it revenge? Was he crazy? She felt most sorry for her daughter. In her eyes, Su Qingsang was the best in the world. No matter what, she was better than Su Peixian. However, when she thought of this, she felt that Su Peixian was her own daughter after all. She couldn't continue thinking about it. She hated Su Qinghui from the bottom of her heart. If it weren't for him, how could her daughter have become like this? Annoyed, he decided not to go out and stayed at home every day. Xiao Yu and Xiao Ning were hired by Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao to take good care of Xiang Kaiping. However, seeing that she was in a bad mood and Su Qingsang didn't show up, he knew that something was wrong. Both of them became more careful, taking care of Xiang Kaiping even more. Xiang Kaiping, on the other hand, could not get over it. Her body had already recovered a lot. However, he did not want to do rehabilitation and did not want to go out. Previously, he could still walk a few steps, but now, he was completely sitting in a wheelchair. Other than normal physiological needs, he was unwilling to get up and move. This was actually not good for the recovery of the body. Yu Xiaoning was secretly anxious, and also tried to call Su Qingsang, asking her to come and have a look. However, when Xiang Kaiping heard what they said, she exploded on the spot. After all, the two of them were outsiders. They did not understand what the mother and daughter were fighting about, so they did not say anything more. After a few days, Xiang Kaiping looked paler and more haggard than before. Yesterday was the Lantern Festival, but there was no festive atmosphere at home. Xiao Ning had a family, so she hurriedly returned home. In the end, she was worried that the old lady would not be able to get over it, so she came back early today. However, not long after lunch, there was a knock on the door. At this time, she did not know who would come. Xiao Yu got up and quickly went to open the door. The person standing outside the door was not someone Xiao Yu knew. She had never seen Su Peijian before, so naturally, she did not know who she was. "Hello, who are you looking for?" The girl in front of her was very young, but her complexion was not very good, and her hair and clothes were a little messy. For a moment, she did not know if the other party was here as a guest or for something else. Before Su Peijian entered the door, she deliberately stood outside the door downstairs for a while in the cold wind, and her hair was a little messy. After taking out the mirror to make sure that her complexion was very bad, she went upstairs. At this time, her pale complexion was not faked. It was really because of the wind. Her body was still very cold, and this kind of discomfort made her blame everything that happened to her today on Su Qingsang. Although she was angry in her heart, a pitiful smile appeared on her face. "Hello, I am looking for Xiang Kaiping." "You are looking for Auntie." Xiao Yu took a step back. Auntie just returned to her room after eating. "Who are you?" "It's okay, I will go in and find her myself." As she said this, Su Peijian directly walked past Xiao Yu and into the room. "Miss," Xiao Yu wanted to stop her, but he could not. He could only watch Su Peijian rush in. "Miss, wait a moment. Let me tell Auntie." Before she could finish, Su Peijian had already searched room by room. She did not need to search too much. After all, the room was only so big. When she opened the second door, Su Peijian saw the old woman. She was sitting in a wheelchair. It seemed that she heard the noise and came out to see what was happening. When she saw Su Peijian, Xiang Kaiping was stunned for a moment. However, Su Peijian let out a cry and threw herself in front of Xiang Kaiping. "Mom!" Xiang Kaiping was stunned on the spot. She had been in a bad mood for the past 2 days. Whenever she thought of what Su Qinghui had done, her heart would be filled with hatred. She also regretted that such a good child like Qingsang was not her own daughter. She also thought of Su Peijian's unruly and stubborn personality. All these things made her unable to muster up any interest in acknowledging Su Peijian. After all, there was a gap between the two of them. If she went to Su Peijian's door to acknowledge her, she was not sure if Su Peijian would accept her. After all, Su Peijian was a good young lady. If she acknowledged her, she would become an illegitimate daughter. With Su Peijian's personality, would she really be able to accept it? Although Xiang Kaiping was angry, she could see through this matter very clearly. After all, no matter how bad Su Peijian was, no matter how spoiled she was by Su Qinghui, she was still her child, her flesh and blood. After what happened with Su Qingsang until now, Su Peijian did not come to visit. She was already prepared that Su Peijian would not acknowledge her as her mother. Because of this, she became more and more depressed. Unexpectedly, Su Peijian came. She came so suddenly, and she still looked like this. Looking at Su Peijian hugging her waist and crying, Xiang Kaiping could not react for a moment. When she met Little Yu's curious and surprised gaze, she glanced at her. Little Yu understood tacitly, retreated, and closed the door. "Mom," Su Peijian cried out again. This time, her tears were real. She was really crying. How could she not cry? She was originally the young lady of the Su family and the department manager of the Li Corporation. Apart from the time when Qiu Yanbo broke off the engagement, her life had been smooth sailing. However, she never thought that life would take a 180-degree turn at such a time. Her grandfather and mother were not her, and neither was her home. The most important thing was that her mother did not want her anymore. She had been with Li Qianxue for more than 20 years. More than 20 years. Could it be that just because she wasn't her biological mother, those 20 years could be erased in one go? Su Peijian did not understand that Li Qianxue was venting her anger on Su Qinghui. She also did not know that her identity had not been revealed until now because Li Qianxue still cared about the mother-daughter relationship. Now, she only felt that she was pitiful and that she had lost everything. She cried extremely miserably. Xiang Kaiping did not like Su Peijian at first. She had not even thought about whether to acknowledge her as her daughter. But no matter what, she was her own daughter, of flesh and blood that fell from her body. Seeing Su Peijian cry like this, Xiang Caiping's heart softened. She raised her hand, trembled a few times, and finally placed it on top of Su Peijian's head. It was a gentle caress. She did not speak. It was such a simple action. Su Peijian raised her head. Her face was originally exposed to the cold wind outside, and it was frozen pale. Now, she was crying like a pear blossom in the rain, looking extremely pitiful. Xiang Caiping's heart softened. "Don't cry. Mom." Su Peijian bit her lip and shrunk her neck a little timidly. You are not angry with me anymore." "Angry? What was there to be angry about?" Xiang Kaiping sighed. "Let's forget about the past. It's fine as long as you are not angry with me." Su Peijian's tolerance was probably not as big as Su Qingsang's. When the time came, she was the one who abandoned her. She was afraid that she would hate her. "Mom." Su Peijian shook her head. At this time, she cried pitifully. I know that my behavior in the past was not good. I also know that because of what happened in the past, you have misunderstood me." Su Peijian's voice sounded hoarse. She sniffled and tried to calm herself down. "But now, I really know that I was wrong. Mom. I know that I was wrong. Please forgive me." Xiang Kaiping looked at her and did not know what else to say. "All right. I said it's nothing. You can get up." After all, the weather was cold. She was afraid that her knees would not be able to bear it if she half knelt on the ground. "I won't get up." Su Peijian's tears flowed even more fiercely. "I also only know who is the real family after all these things. Mom. Now, I have nothing left. Mom, your daughter, I am about to be forced to death." Xiang Caiping's heart tightened. She looked at Su Peijian and said, "What did you say? Who forced you to die?" Su Peijian lowered her head and cried even harder. She did not say a word. Xiang Kaiping was furious. She could not help but reach out to pull her. "Don't cry. Quickly get up and talk. Speak properly. Who on earth forced you to die?" You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.